Surprise, everybody. How's it going? I know this is not our usual live time, but I wasn't here yesterday to go live because I wasn't feeling great yesterday. So I figured we'd pop up out of the blue today and we'd react to something. And of course, Jubilee hits us with a heater. They got Ben Shapiro on finally. And I know Jubilee has been working to get Ben Shapiro on for quite some time. And they brought him on to debate 25 Kamala Harris voters. So I can only imagine how this is going to go. He's going to run the gauntlet on these people, but we're going to react to it here today. I'm happy to have you here. I've been seeing clips of this already going viral all over Twitter, all over Instagram, all over TikTok. So it's got 2 million views already, and I think it's only been up for like 8 hours. So we're gonna get straight into it. It's just me today, so I don't know if I'm gonna get through all of your super chats at the end of the show, but if you send in some super chats during the show, I'll pluck a few out and read them to people. Appreciate you guys. Without further ado, let's watch Ben Shapiro debate 25 Kamala Harris voters.
In this country right now, 300,000 minors. We have no idea where they are.
Oh, that is nonsense.
That is not nonsense.
No, it is.
Nonsense.
They are not lost. They're released to their sponsors who have to go through background checks. You have no idea what you're talking about.
They don't.
You think 300,000 minors are lost in America? Are you crazy?
I'm saying that. Why, hello there. I'm Ben Shapiro, and I'm co-founder of The Daily Wire and host of The Ben Shapiro Show. And today, I'm surrounded by 25 Kamala Harris supporters.
25, surrounded. Whew. Ben is so used to this because he's going to colleges all the time. He's speaking to, dissident people of dissident opinions all the time. So I can imagine this is going to be a cakewalk.
My first claim is Kamala Harris's attempt to put DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion at the center of her policies is destructive.
Okay. We know that all to be true. She is literally the DEI candidate. She would not be where she is if it weren't for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm curious to see where people run around on this one. Obviously, I think most of them are going to be in support of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we'll see if they can beat Ben on any of this.
How's it going, dude?
Morning, Josh.
Where do I get one of those hats?
Oh, my boy made it for me.
Nice.
First of all, we're standing on stolen indigenous Tongva land, right? This is
Are you moving anytime soon?
land. No, but
Why?
the fact of the matter is I'm born and raised California.
Why do I feel like he Googled that like 10 minutes before he showed up where he was at? Just a theory.
We're talking
Yeah, but
about
it's stolen land, so why don't you
diversity,
give it back?
equity, and vision. We should.
So why don't
We
you?
absolutely
You
should.
could do it today, right now.
Great.
So
We
do it.
should, but that's not my point here. The point is you're saying that diversity, equity, and inclusion is destructive.
Yes.
Right. So when we look at this country that is built off the backs of slavery and white supremacy, taking the lead, building the roots and foundations of everything that you know and believe today, it's ironic to see a Black and Indian woman who's rising up to the occasion against society, pushing them down. And this isn't just the fact that they're Black and Indian and a woman, it's the fact that—
But it is the thing that I had to say about her first. Also, we should go back to that point about whether or not you should give up the land that you're sitting on right now. If you're so like radical lefty, we're sitting on stolen land, do something about it. And you see how he just quickly moved over it. Oh, we should do something about it. Well, if you're so radically in support of these ideas, why don't you do something about it? Instead of just giving me an acknowledgement of something you probably Googled like 10 minutes before showing up here. Let's be honest.
that
Can you give me an
those
example of how society
demographics—
pushed Kamala Harris down, please?
the demographic of people is what I'm talking
Well,
about.
yeah, but you suggested that Kamala Harris is being pushed down by society.
I'm not suggesting that, no.
I mean, that's
So
Okay,
my
boss.
point is saying
I'm
that—
sorry, you've been voted out by the majority. Please
Yikes.
return to your
Good
seat.
to me.
Oh, and I actually see a 26 in the left-hand corner, so he's against 26, not 25. I guess it just looks better for the headline to say 25 instead of 26.
Hate you. Whoa. Man.
We got a new guy in the seat. Timothy says, I'm not a huge fan of Ben or Charlie, but I prefer Ben's style of debate. It's more analytical and less emotionally charged. I wish I had his skills. Yeah, I do. I think out of the two, I would prefer Ben's as well. Aaron says, glad to see you debate on Jubilee again, Amala. Well, at least we're reacting to it. I should get back on Jubilee, hopefully soon. Hit me up. Hit me up, Jubilee. Hey, Ben. But I'm not going to be one of the 25 people running to a chair. Yeah, I'm too embarrassing.
Hey, how's it going?
Nice to meet you. So my opening question to you would be, why is that a destructive thing? Why is that a bad thing when for a long time in this country, I feel personally that white men have had an advantage over some communities that have been discriminated against. So why would you say that that is a destructive thing?
Well, was it so bad when we did it for white men, as you're claiming? Yup. It was bad when we elevated one race over the other. So do we solve that issue by elevating one race over the other? Okay, so this is a logical conclusion of things. If you don't think what was happening in America's past, all those transgressions on the basis of race and sex, as they claim, maybe we shouldn't instill those very same values, but on the opposite end here in the United States.
And not, making up for lost time.
Sure. So let me explain what I mean by diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the basic theory of diversity, equity, and inclusion is spelled out by people like Richard Delgado, who's sort of one of the founders of, for example, critical race theory, is that essentially disparities equal discrimination. That if you see any disparity between one group in the United States and another group in the United States, that is the result of some exterior discrimination. It is not the result of individuals within that group acting differently. It's not the result of cultural differences. It's not the result of aggregated differences within individuals within that group. And that to me is a failure of logic. It also is destructive in that it separates group from group, particularly in the United States, on the basis of race, which is not the best way of actually bringing Americans together or forming policy that is the best for all Americans.
Do you think there's room for nuance, perhaps, though? Like, yeah, maybe not everybody, but there certainly has been a large sect of people that has had it harder because of the color of their skin or their sexuality or their gender identity. Could you acknowledge that maybe there's, a middle ground there where it's not all, but there is some people who certainly have had a disadvantage?
I will say that history has consequences, obviously, and that if you are talking about historic marginalization of particular groups, that has consequences. The problem is that when you design policy in order to rectify for cosmic injustices or historic injustices, you actually have to try and measure out whether underperformance, say economically, is due to those historic injustices. If so, how much? What is the corrective policy that is actually aimed at achieving best opportunity for all? The diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that are directed at separating race from race and then benefiting one race, for example, at the expense of another, ignore the fact that there are individuals within those groups, that history does not fall on everybody equivalent, that frankly, genetics and intelligence don't necessarily fall on an individual level, right?
I love that I don't have to I don't have to speed this up to 2x. Normally I watch all my YouTube videos in 2x, and with Ben, you can just let it glide.
You and I don't look the same. We might have different heights. We might have different qualities. That is just the way that God or nature has bestowed skill sets on everybody. What exactly is the government supposed to correct for? And if you took this entire group and you separated it in half, just draw a line anywhere. It's a circle, right? Anywhere you draw a line, you're going to get disparities between the two groups on either side of the line, without regard to race, without regard to sex, and without regard to, for example, sexual orientation.
But does that mean that hasn't played an effect in that story at all?
I'm not going to. No, you'd be a fool to claim that again, past injustices have no effect on what's happened today.
I like that. That was a very respectful conversation. I think he actually was trying to be nuanced in his approach to the issue. And I think he does have some ground for his thinking in that, yes, there have been disparities that we've witnessed, and we've seen injustices, practiced against people on the basis of their race and their gender. And we just advocate for different solutions to that. So far, a very respectful conversation. Kennedy says, "Hi, Amala. I love you and Taylor, and I really want to see you in one of these because they can't pull the white card, LOL. Anyways, have a good weekend." Yeah, it would be interesting to be in one of these surroundeds because I'm curious. So far, they've dealt with Charlie and they've dealt with Ben, and then with the liberals, they dealt with Dean. And of course, they pull the white privilege card on each and every one of them, except for Dean, of course, because he's already a liberal. So it would be interesting to see what they'd have to say.
Thanks so much. Watching guys gear up to run is really entertaining.
All right.
That was so nice, everybody. Thank you.
I recognize her.
So you believe that certain economic disparities between racial groups are caused as a result of cultural differences?
Sure.
And so what is the backing on this? What would you say contributes to your belief in that?
Okay, so not all cultures, for example, value studying in school the same. You can check this by the amount of hours that kids of particular cultures study. So for example...
Look at that face. He's so offended. He thinks it's so racist to think that some cultures study more than others. This is fascinating.
Korean Americans study a lot more than, for example, Latino Americans in terms of the number of hours that kids study. It would be hard to suggest what to attribute that to other than sort of parental guidance and what exactly the priorities are of the parents. This is true, by the way, between white people. Okay, so when I talk about disparities between groups, you can talk about white Appalachia, and there are very different values with regard to studying than there are for, say, upper class white Americans who are living in Brooklyn, right? That's not the exact same thing. So cultural differences are not just racial differences. I think that anybody who attempts to sort of clumsily map that on and pretend that that's all the same, that's obviously not true. But cultural differences do explain an enormous amount of group disparities across incomes. To take a perfect example, if you look at single motherhood rates, they're not equivalent across groups. Those are going to have massive differences with regard to outcomes for children. So if you're talking about cultural differences, again, cultural is just it was a rough way of saying how people act within a group on a large scale. And that is going to amount to some generalization, but that generalization is going to tend to, shall we say, concur. It's going to correlate very highly with outcome.
Very smart in the way that he's laying this out, and he's not necessarily reverting to directly people of color and trying to make an insinuation about their culture, although he could and he would have grounds for making those statements. He's trying to, as best as he can, reflect that this is something that can be tracked across all colors and races and sexes. No need to worry. We all have culture, and our culture impacts us in so many different ways. If people want to look into this a little deeper, there's a book called Discrimination and Disparities. It's written by Tom Sowell, a brilliant economist, and he talks about how culture influences the way that we grow up. And one of the most significant prerequisites for success, is what he calls them, is having two parents in the household. And more so than that, when in your developmental, childhood, two parents in your household that read to you on a regular basis. And believe it or not, a lot of cultures do not have that as a common practice within their household. And it does indicate in a lot of ways the success of your child moving forward in life. And it speaks to a lot of different dynamics that are now present in the household and that are going to impress upon this child. And we can track that through all different cultures. There's a reason that Asian women are earning a lot of money and income, and they're one of the highest earning groups here in the United States of America. Culture informs these things. And he brings up single parenthood, a big issue in this country, children growing up without two parents in the household. And this can affect chronic illnesses. It can affect whether or not you graduate high school, whether or not you go to college, whether or not you end up homeless, in jail, this, that, and the other. I can make a laundry list of things that impacts. Cultural indicators, very important. Carl Spackler says, I'd advise not listening to Ben at 2 times speed. I tried once and I found another dimension. I'm pretty sure you did. Sarah says, I honor Ben on many aspects. His ground is very logical and whatnot. Still, his bias is prominent, of course. And, he has religious bias and other things that inform his views. And that's something that I feel like at least he's somewhat honest about. Legitly Spelunking says, can't stay for the whole live, but dropping by to show my support. Always love to hear your nuanced takes. Thanks you so much, Legitly. I appreciate it.
But culture is acclimated over time. It becomes a thing over time. And so do you not think that these historical disadvantages that certain ethnic groups have been through over time has created this culture in which they're unable to put themselves ahead? You do say that Asian Americans are more likely to study, yes, but we have to take into account that after the Chinese Exclusion Act, Asian Americans were given a certain type of reparations which allowed them into the country. And in order for them, they were given visas, which allowed them to come into they were given easier processes into visas, which allowed them into, no, it's a form of reparations, which they were once excluded from coming in. And so giving them an easier opportunity to attain these visas allowed them into the US. And mainly the individuals who were able to attain those were people with higher educations, which is why it may seem that Asian Americans within the country who come in typically with higher incomes as well as higher educational backgrounds, it may come off as that they are more studious than Latino Americans. But what we have to take into account is that Latin America and Hispanic people have faced a lot of tremendous setback due to historical atrocities. It's not.
I mean, are you going to attribute everything to historical injustices? And I think what she's taking is a sort of negative connotation to Asians being more studious than Latinos. What if we said that Latinos and Latinas happen to be more family oriented? than other cultures. That's not a negative thing, but it just so happens to be the case. Is she going to say that that is the result of historical injustice? She also has to grapple with the fact that outside of periods of historical injustice, you still see negative parts of cultures impact people. Like, for example, Black America, let's talk about that. During like the Jim Crow South here in the United States, Black America was doing relatively well when we're looking at certain metrics, earning income and really bridging the wealth gap that existed between white and Black Americans, nuclear families at a higher rate than what we have now. So during a time of historical injustice, legislated historical injustice, Black Americans were doing pretty well in these metrics. Then we go through the civil rights era with the welfare state and all these different things. Now we're dealing with these record rates of single parent households, all these other issues. The income gap is not closing at the same rate as it was. So do we have historical injustice to blame for that being the reality for Black America now? It doesn't make sense to me.
Not their culture, per se. What you see within...
Is there any individual agency in here? Or is it all historic circumstance?
Everything is based off of history. Everything acclimates. Everything is an accumulation of history.
So to take the single motherhood example, for example...
The way...
That was fun anyway.
There's a lot of, I can understand this too. You're talking to Ben. He's a highly decorated debater when it comes to these issues. I can imagine there's a lot of emotion, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and you can sort of see it in people as they are in engaging with him. And I think we're going to get more of that. I'm curious to see what the emotional composition of this room is, because when Charlie Kirk was on, there was a lot of rude individuals, a lot of laughing, a lot of snarky comments. I wonder if Ben is going to get the same. Daniel says, saw this earlier, so glad y'all did a stream about it today. Had to do it. Steven says, higher education, specifically STEM, which translates to higher income, is highly valued in many first-generation African, Asian, and Indian households. This is not the case with African-American culture. 100%. That is absolutely true. And we can track this because a lot of people will say, oh, being Black in America is so difficult. Well, look at immigrant populations that happen to be Black, who exist in a wholly different culture that is separate from the culture of native-born Black Americans. Why are they more highly educated? Why are they higher income earners? These are questions because we're all treated like Black people according to their ideology.
Whoa.
Wow. See, you're not going to catch me embarrassingly running towards a chair like that. If you guys want to have a conversation, I'm going to mosey on down to the chair. I'm going to sit my ass down and we can speak. But to fight over a chair,
Hey, how's it going? How are you? Good to meet you.
So your basis is saying that culturally, people don't have the same advantages, right?
I'm saying that not every culture sort of initiates the same action within groups.
So in part, you're saying that you're part of each culture. You know what goes on in each culture to say these things.
No, I'm saying that I can analyze the activities of a particular group with reference to their actual behavior.
So if you go into my culture, we're told that we can achieve anything through hard work. We have to work 10 times harder.
And somebody failed in telling you that. Who told you have to work 10 times harder when it's simply not the case? If anything, in being Black and presumably trans in this individual's case, y'all got layup after layup. You have affirmative action. You get benefits for your transness. People are like actively seeking you out to give you certain positions and to elevate you above other people. So I don't know where this narrative came from that you have to work 10 times harder. And whoever told you that is actually setting you up for failure. Imagine your little child, your 5-year-old child comes to you and says, Mommy and Daddy, I think I want to try playing basketball. And you go, okay, Timmy, but just going to let you know, you're going to have to work 10 times harder than every other kid who wants to play basketball too. Do you know how deflating that is to hear? And I imagine that this person has been hearing this for the vast majority of their life, considering that's the narrative that we have in this country. And how unfortunate that somebody told you that and set you back with just the words coming out of their mouth that are in no way, shape, or form a reflection of reality.
But you're not part of our culture, so you're explaining something that doesn't have to do with you. But in turn, you're saying that that culture, unfortunately, does not value the same thing that the next culture does.
So revealed preference tends to be a better way of doing social science than subjective perception. So revealed preference is how people act in the world. So for example, if you have one group of people who say, we really, really value our kids studying, and then their kids don't study at all, that would be a revealed preference.
Okay.
Everybody has
so then when you have people
study.
who say in corporate America, you have people who value nepotism versus actual studying hard. What is that called then?
Okay, so the idea that people generally value nepotism over studying hard, I'd like to see the evidence of that, given the fact the vast majority of wealth in this country is not created through nepotism or through inherited wealth.
But Donald Trump was given nepotism, was he not?
I mean, he's one example among a bajillion people who are very, very wealthy in this country. I'm very wealthy now. I certainly wasn't born very wealthy.
That's crazy.
But then you can't speak on Donald Trump's experience, can you not?
That happens to be the case.
That's like being like, Gracie Abrams is J.J. Abrams' daughter, and now she has a music career. It's like, okay, yeah, nobody's denying that nepotism exists. I'm just saying it doesn't make up like wealth and experience and privilege in totality. Oh, fascinating. Okay, Chicken Pork Adobo says, Asian experienced historical injustice. Indians were under the British. Philippines were under Spain, etc. Injustice is not just an American thing, yet Asians thrived in the U.S. because we experienced worse. Yeah, and it's just culture. It's the culture that you have throughout the experience of injustice or on the other end of the experience of injustice, and it's going to be different for different groups of people. I know we're not allowed to say that because everything is supposed to be equal and equitable, but it's just simply not the case. Smithy J says, Ben's pronouns are cooking. Love that. And Cool Dude sends a super chat, no message. Appreciate you. Let's keep watching.
Okay, I mean, you can laugh at my particular history, but I grew up in an 1,100 square foot home in Burbank, California, with 4 siblings in 1 bedroom.
In Burbank.
That's crazy.
In Burbank, I'm sorry, but in Burbank versus growing up in South Central, being told that you have to excel 10 times harder than the next person, but then you're not part of the culture, to say that you can actually come to these disparities is kind of far-sighted.
The idea that you have to work 10 times harder coming from South Central based on, for example, test scores is obviously not true. We've had affirmative action programs in this country for solidly 40 years.
But now affirmative action is gone. It's out the door.
Thank
now
God,
DEI is present. DEI is actually saying that we need to have diversity, equity, inclusion. So you're actually putting a footing in the door for different races, different genders, different women, different men.
In the wrong way. There's certainly things we can do for underprivileged individuals or people who lack resources, but it should not be on the basis of their race and their sex. And it's very interesting because I would not write off the fact that you probably did struggle growing up in South Central. And I've been to South Central. I've worked with police in South Central. There's a lot of things that kids in particular have to struggle through, and especially when they're trying to get their education. It's not the best area to be born in, and it does come with its own challenges and barriers that you have to cross. But that does not negate that Ben has also experienced something similar. You cannot write him off because of his whiteness.
Everything. So now you're saying that because this program is gone, this one isn't.
Sorry, you've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
You've been voted off the island. Oh, I recognize her.
Yeah, like a jackrabbit. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Not y'all always saying this is me in another dimension. As soon as this video came out, I was getting tagged. Oh, Amala's back. Amala's back. This is me. The left is me in the multiverse.
Hi,
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
And she would not like that I just said that. Let's just get that on the record.
So, I kind of want to shift the conversation about DEI a little bit away from culture, because I don't know if that's necessarily like a helpful conversation to have.
It's most definitely a helpful conversation to have, but I digress.
And I really want to talk more about representation. So 1 in 5 Americans currently is Hispanic. This country, like it or not, is not a homogenous country. We are a very diverse country. Mm-hmm. Do you not think that our legislators should be representative of the overall population?
I would pause her right there and please tell me, I think her name is Naeem or something like that. What do Hispanic people believe? Give me 10 bullet points of things that every single Hispanic person believes so that we can get a Hispanic representative to give the Hispanic opinion on things. And if you can't tell me 10 things that every single Hispanic person agrees on, then it doesn't quite make sense to vie for representation on the basis of race. Now, does it? Because last time I checked, being Hispanic is not a monolith. There's plenty of different beliefs that Hispanics have.
I don't see a way that you can have a quote unquote representative legislature with 435 members of Congress in a country of 340 million people, because you can divvy that up however you want. It's not by race. You could do it by sex. You could do it by gender. You could do it by sexual orientation. How exactly do you decide what is quote unquote the representative group? And also, I don't believe that individuals ought to be represented based on group identity. So, for example, I'm Jewish. Jews are actually overrepresented in Congress. I don't think that we ought to decide exactly how many people in Congress are Jewish based on the Jewish population of the country.
Exactly.
I think that's actually a pretty silly way to do representation.
Well, we don't have to do it systematically, but fundamentally, there is an issue with the fact that we are not fully represented. Like, the entire population is not represented.
I mean,
we have
that's not
never
true,
had a
though.
black female president. I still have to pay taxes.
We've never had a
the
Jewish
whole
president. Who
concept is
cares?
no taxation without. Well, we have had a white male president. We've had
Do all white men believe the same thing? I'm pretty sure Joe Biden was just president, is president currently, if we can even call it that. Is he representative of Ben Shapiro's views because he's a white man? I don't think so. Another super chat from Tijuana Border Jumper. Okay. Everything that I dream of and accomplish is up to me, no one else. Or any perceived barriers, I will succeed no matter what. And I am a gay 60-year-old Mexican male. I love that attitude. Radical responsibility, radical accountability. You know, the things that are not in my control, I must let fly in the wind, and we should take the reins on everything that we do have control over.
Well,
45 of them?
whether Jews count as white or not has been sort of an object of debate for
You do.
quite a while. We do. Okay.
You do.
So, I mean, it depends according to whom, and that's a pretty recent development. Okay, so
basically everyone. It's a religion.
Judaism
Do
is
you
also
not
ethnicity.
agree that you are a white man?
I mean, I think that it depends on the context in which you're discussing it.
So
Meaning
what
that
are you, Ben? Are you not a white guy?
I mean, I'm a man of Jewish ethnicity, which is sometimes grouped with white and sometimes not. I mean, that's the more accurate way to put it. But when
What
we're
else would
talking
you be
about
grouped with?
with Jews, who are which is an
But it's-
ethnicity. I mean,
So
yeah.
you're not white at all.
I mean, again, it depends who's doing the grouping and how. I've seen Jews grouped with white and Jews grouped with not white. Are we just pretending that doesn't exist? That's a reality. However, as far as your generalized point, which is that we are supposed to identify people by group identity, that if we don't have a black female president, somehow black females have not been represented. So Barack Obama was in no way representative of black females because he's not a female.
No,
He's
he
black.
was. He was representative,
So
but
he was
that's
half
the point.
representative. How do you do the math on this? And why?
Yeah.
You
Please.
shouldn't do the math on it completely statistically, but the fact
You shouldn't
is
do the
there
math
is
on it at all. You should
clearly
treat people as individuals.
underrepresented.
You should treat people as individuals.
How can you substantiate that they're underrepresented if you can't do the math on it? If you're not allowed to do the math on it, how is that going to work out? I'm confused because I saw her video pop up on Twitter and everybody's like, she ate him up, and it had like 70,000 likes on it. Where? Where is she eating? She's starving. She's starving. Sleepy Chimera says, I am a Native American, and I usually refrain from telling people because I don't want to be seen as my race and hired because of my race. I would like to be hired because I'm qualified. That's what's up, you know? I appreciate that. And even that in a system that's benefiting you, you're saying, I don't agree with how these benefits are being doled out, so I'm going to abstain. Pepper says, love your content, Amala. Appreciate you, Pepper.
Well, if you don't even want Kamala Harris to attempt to create DEI initiatives in office, then there isn't even going to be a conversation about it.
I mean, I don't think there ought to be a conversation about why we ought to be represented by race or by sex. I think that we are each individual people with individual ideas, and if that person represents my ideas, I don't care what sex, race, or sexual orientation they are.
Exactly.
I mean, to an extent, yes.
No,
but there
entirely.
is an issue with the lack of empathy in office. We need to be able to empathize and legislate for the people that are living in this country.
I was not.
Can you not empathize with people outside of your race and your sex? I'm confused. I think that's more an indictment on you than it is on other people.
Do you not believe that?
I was not aware that empathy is relegated to particular race solidarity.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, it's easier to be empathetic towards people whose experiences you can fundamentally understand based on your identity. Like,
Who's to say you can fundamentally understand anybody's experiences based on their identity? I don't know. I'm looking at her. I would assume we share some sort of part of our identity. I don't know that I can fundamentally understand any experience that she's had, and she can't fundamentally understand anyone that I've had unless I express that to her or she witnesses and is able to make judgments on that. But she wouldn't know if you didn't witness or hear about it.
do you not believe that people have an inherent bias?
So first of all, I'm
based
not
on
sure.
identity?
I mean, we can start with the empathy itself. I'm not sure that empathy is always the best basis for actual public policy, because when you have group solidarity and empathy based on group solidarity, you're going to attempt to actually benefit the group with whom you have solidarity. So that actually cuts against
But
generalized
that's like a
public
fundamental
policy.
thing that just exists, which is why we need representation in government. Okay,
Incorrect.
cute. Thank you.
That is not correct. Okay, next. Woo!
Wow, he got it this time.
Not y'all calling her my evil twin. Timothy says, not Amala's evil twin arguing with Ben Shapiro about what being Jewish really is. Kirsten says, I watched earlier today. I love how calm and collected Ben stays. I'd love to debate my liberal friends, but it stinks that they can no longer be rational and respectful. Yeah, so far things are remaining pretty respectful. There's like laughing and stuff in the background, but we're doing all right. Rhythm, Rabbit says, hi, Amala. We love you over here. You're very beautiful and intelligent. Thank you so much. My boss always says you fit under the category of a person that knows 300% more than what they are talking about. That is so kind. Tell your boss I say hi. That is the sweetest compliment.
All right, nice.
Oh my gosh, Parker and Dean. You know what they remind me of? It's like Fuhad and James from Shits and Gigs. If you guys are familiar with that podcast, they're like two guys that can't go anywhere without one another. Like they're attached at the hip a little bit because, you know, that Parker and Dean have that whole sort of vibe going on. I've given my thoughts on Dean in his Jubilee episode, so we'll see if he pulls the exact same trick in this episode.
Good to see you. How are you doing?
Doing all right. How are you, Ben?
You know, it's been a day.
Yeah, it's a little bit of like an interesting setting being surrounded by 20 people that disagree with you.
I mean, the truth is I grew up in LA and then I went to law school in Cambridge, so
you
I'm a little used to it.
Yeah.
I've been here before.
Anyways, let's talk about DEI. Do you think that Trump should have won 2016? I'll wrap it in. It's conceptually relevant. I'll demonstrate the relevance.
Okay, sounds good. By what measure? Do I think he did win, or do I think he should have won?
Do you think he should have won?
I mean, yes, I'm happy that he won. If the question is, am I happy that he won? I'm happy that he won.
Okay. Well, I'd say that Trump won 2016 because...
By the way, I did not vote for either candidate in 2016. That's a decision made in retrospect.
Awesome. So I think that Trump won 2016 because of a modality of DEI.
Oh, I love it.
Essentially, what I'd say is the Electoral College, right, strives for inclusion of smaller states with lower populations by overrepresenting them in the overall vote.
I love this. Let me go ahead and pause and do my little rant on what Dean does in every single debate that he has ever. When you have this topic of DEI or say racism, whatever the case may be, he'll try to find some like outlying example that he can attach to DEI, which is not a direct attachment to DEI, by the way. And he'll try to get you to grant that you accept that outlier version of DEI, which he has just stated is DEI. And then if you accept that, then he goes, well, why don't you accept every other version of DEI where we discriminate against people on the basis of their race and their gender or their sexual orientation, and we provide preferential treatment to people based on their race or their gender or their sexual orientation. And you see how that doesn't work. He did the very same thing when talking about Trump. He did this claim that Trump is a racist. So then he pulls one example from 50 years ago and asks people, do you think this is racist? And that example, by the way, was not actual racism if you go and look into the story. And if people grant that that is a racist act, then he goes, well, that must mean that Trump is a racist and you support racism. So it's just, it's an old trick at this point for this kid.
You could correct me if I'm wrong, or the sand fact checkers can. I'm pretty sure that over the last 25 to 30 years, Republicans have won the presidency given the Electoral College, not given the overall popular vote. So if you're against DEI, if you don't want inclusion on the basis of race, inclusion on the basis of gender, or even what you're saying earlier, we could even say inclusion on the basis of class, why do you want inclusion on the basis of population, rural areas, states,
we should actually use a better example. Why don't you just ask if I believe in the U.S. Senate? Right?
The U.S. Senate, this would also apply to the U.S. Senate.
Right, okay, so let's use the U.S. Senate because the U.S. Senate is actually even more unrepresentative of the general population than the Electoral College, which is at least a rough approximation.
It'd just be funnier to hear you say that you shouldn't have voted for Trump in 2016, but we could talk about the Senate as well.
That's a different subject, but yeah. I'm very happy that he won, even though I didn't vote for it. I mean, we can talk about Trump later. Yeah. We've already done a bit. Well, I'm sure we'll do more. As far as the idea that every elected body has to be elected based on population as opposed to based on the area of geographic distribution or the states that actually pre-existed the federal government. Okay, the way that the Constitution of the United States was created was as a contract between sovereign states, which is one of the reasons why, for example, you have a United States Senate as opposed to just a House of Representatives. So is that a form of DEI? That seems like a stretch to me. The kind of DEI that I'm talking about specifically would be separating human beings based on inherent characteristics, like, for example, race, as opposed to suggesting that the United States Senate, which is obviously unrepresentative of the general population,
well, seemingly my point is
somehow
that
bad.
this
That's
is
a
just
check and balance, right?
Well, seemingly my point is that this is another modality of DEI.
And it
I've like no
certainly
problem
isn't.
with you explaining to.
If you read into the critical theory that is the basis for the creation of diversity, equity, and inclusion, it has nothing to do with the example that Dean is utilizing here. He's just like extrapolating DEI to fit this one outlier that he feels like he can release a gotcha on conservatives with. And if you're not prepared for that, or if you're not well versed in the actual foundation of DEI, he might trick you into accepting that that is a form of DEI that you agree with. But even so, you could say, I don't agree with DEI in the form of race, gender, and sexual orientation, discrimination. So it doesn't quite work. I see a lot of you saying this is a bad faith argument. It most certainly is, but it will get the wrong person if you're not prepared. Pepper says, probably getting off subject, but I need to say it somewhere. Trump is blamed for the border crisis, but a few short years ago, he was criticized for building a border wall. So which is it? Well, Pepper, what it is we use whatever argument is convenient for us at the time. Textprod says, I do not cringe of yapping liberals, but that thing, Dean and Parker, that thing gives me the ick. Yeah, they're doing their thing. They're beloved by the left. The left loves Dean and Parker. So you know what? They're boys. They want the attention. They're doing okay.
Me, right? Why the Senate or the Electoral College would be given the U.S. Constitution and like some contractual agreement that they had between the sovereign states, that's fine. But what I'd say is that your claim here would just imply that the Constitution upholds DEI within our electoral processes.
If your claim is
so, do you think that the Constitution upholds DEI in the sense of including smaller states with less representative populations?
That is a true stretch of the meaning of DEI. But I get your point. I mean, if the idea is that the only thing that is not pure DEI in a democratic context would be sort of...
I'm already bored of this, and he will always argue from this standpoint because he has no other standpoint to argue for support of DEI that is going to be in any way, shape, or form successful for conservatives. And luckily, he's only debated this against, Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro, who are not going to fall for it no matter what you do.
Popularly represented votes, then I think you can make the case that basically you should get rid of every representative institution. We should go to a pure democracy because...
Well, I'm not making a case for what we should replace it with. I'm making the case that it would uphold DEI. We could talk about, what other systems should function in the case of the Electoral College or in the case of the Senate, but that's a completely different conversation than are these systems upholding DEI?
So again, I think that you're definitionally stretching DEI. If DEI is the basic idea that all disparities equal discrimination and must be rectified by government interventionism, which is sort of the definition, then stretching that to mean the Electoral College seems like you're going pretty far afield to defend a very broad concept as specifically badly applied.
Wait, 1 second. I don't think that we need to say that DEI is equivalent to disparities equal discrimination. We could just see that DEI is like a qualm for disparities in general, right? And what we apply here in this certain modality when we're talking about the Electoral College, when we're talking about the Senate, is we're trying to qualm the disparities of the lack of population in rural areas. We're trying to qualm the disparities of smaller states compared to larger states.
Well, then you haven't written the journals that brought about the foundations of DEI. So, I mean, I don't know what to tell you there. Albright Starlight says, Amelie, you are fantastic. Thank you. It's insane that he thinks he has to work harder when the red carpet is rolled out for him. I'm excited you are doing this. Yeah, insane to hear some of the things that people believe. Stethoscopes and Study Guides with Melissa Ann says, I watched some of this video earlier. Quite a few of these Kamala supporters were very argumentative and rude and wouldn't let Shapiro respond to what they were saying or asking. Just no respect. Am I at all shocked by that? And I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction here that Ben is going to remain respectful throughout. I think Charlie released a couple of digs as they got to him, but I don't think Ben is going to do that. And this will really show the character of the two separate groups.
Seemingly, you haven't really given me a response to this apart from calling it a stretch, but I do appreciate you for
No, I mean, it seems to me like the argument that you're making is that in order for there to be calm and sort of conciliation inside the United States, particular racial groups have to be given particular benefits. Okay, well, because that was the argument with regard to the states in the United States, right? When the Constitution was formed, the way that you came to an actual agreement in the Constitutional Convention is states were not going to sign on unless they got particular guarantees of the interests of those particular states, right? So if you're claiming that that's DEI, then the response that I would have is right, because that's how you have to come to an agreement. So if you're going to make the parallel argument with regard to DEI in, for example, the racial context.
Oh, look at Parker. Parker's like, my boy's getting flamed. I think if you hurt Dean, Parker feels it too.
You then have to make the case that the only way that you can have conciliation in the United States is for particular racial groups to be given specific racial benefits, and otherwise the country is going to split apart, which is an argument with which I generally disagree, even if I agreed with the way the Constitution was formed.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't see like your parallel here, right? I think that DEI could exist in multiple modalities. My argument in a nutshell is nothing more than the fact that we see disparities existing in rural areas compared to metropolitan areas. We see disparities existing in the size of a state and its overall population, and you're calming these, and you're
right, but the
losing the
DEI response to that would not be
like through like an over representation.
And the DEI
and I understand that your argument is, but my single-handed point here is that you would say, in some sense, that this is a reconciliation to introduce more, inclusion in the sense of a state to state in their population. I mean, so if you'd make the concession that this is DEI, would you say in the same sense that we shouldn't have
I don't make
other
the concession
DEI
that falls within the definition of DEI that I've used. And if your claim is that I'm now in favor of, for example, subsidies to rural areas at the expense of urban areas, I'm not actually.
So do you think that DEI would only apply in the context of race?
No, it could apply in the context of class. It could apply.
Okay, if it could apply in the context of race, class, and identity, why can't it apply in the context of a state's population and their representation in our government?
I mean, if they were to receive special bennies at the expense of other members of the population,
they are. Yes, like Alabama or Arkansas are literally receiving special benefits insofar as a greater level of representation in our Senate and in our electoral processes compared to people in California. I mean, for instance, that's my 1 second.
Let's pause Dean for a second here. He's going to keep going. Matt Granton says it makes it more difficult to watch Dean and Parker because I don't think I've seen them conduct a debate in good faith, just gotchas and TikTok clips. Yeah, I remember when I saw clips of him debating Nick Fuentes on Twitter, and Parker, I guess, was watching the debate as it was happening live and texting Dean different talking points to use, and it seems like they had some sort of synergistic relationship going on there. So that's really all I need to know about these two. Cool Dude said this country don't belong. Wait, this country people don't believe equal opportunity. I don't know that I'm exactly following there.
And that's my buddy Parker over there. He lives in California, right? And I'm
fully aware
I
of the
live in
Electoral College and the
Colorado.
Senate work, dude.
So I literally have more representation person for person in the sense of Parker's vote compared to my vote, because individualistically speaking, I'm from a state that has more representation, and the same thing could be said for multiple other states across America, especially in the Senate. There's two senators that represent me and everyone else in Colorado, and there's two senators that represent him and the millions more people.
How are you getting
from
point A, which is that California has 2 senators and Colorado has 2 senators, to point B, which is that we should have incredible racial carve-outs on the basis of group identity at the behest of the federal government? That is a very, very large stretch.
Yes,
and to get from point A to point B on the basis of the constitutional structure seems like you're going pretty far afield. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but you know, the rubber band only goes so far.
That's the end of this claim.
Oh, that's the end of the claim. Time is up. Let's read some super chats here. Eddie Max has agreed this debate is much easier to stomach than Charlie Kirk's. Her commentary still always makes it better. Thank you so much. So kind. South Pole 380 says, Amala, we have plenty of conservative influencers who are white and black. We don't have a Hispanic influencer. Can we nominate you to find us our Hispanic conservative influencer? Anna Paulina doesn't count for us. You know what? Why do we need influencers on the basis of race? Isn't that what a conservative would say? Wink.
Shit, man. Hopefully we can talk more.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I gotta dap up Parker. Okay, let's skip. Okay, what's the next one?
My next claim is that Kamala Harris's extreme pro-abortion stance is morally indefensible.
Oh gosh, you guys know I don't love abortion debates, but we've done so many of them on this channel. We might watch a little bit. I've heard that one gets particularly interesting with the trans person in this, so we are not going to skip that part of it. But let's start and see where we go. Okay.
What's going on, dude? Hey, good to meet you. Okay, so I just want to clarify the claim because, okay, so the claim that I'm making about Kamala Harris, let's first say like what I believe her position to be. Okay, so she has not stated any abortion law that she would not veto. Right, so the Partial Birth Abortion Ban Act, for example, or late-term abortion bans, she would presumably veto that as President of the United States. That's the position that I'm taking in this particular prompt. Okay, so that is the position that I find morally indefensible. Okay, so again, I'm a very, very pro-life person, but I can see at least the sort of nuanced arguments that some people on the left try to make about abortion, even if I disagree with those arguments. The argument that she's making, which is effectively abortion until birth should be in no way regulated, I find that to be morally indefensible.
My understanding right now is that a majority of Democrats would not support abortion through birth. My understanding is the more popular position, I don't think any state lets you go through birth. Maybe I'm off on that. Maybe there's a couple.
California and New York, actually.
Okay, understood. But yeah, I think the key claim is basically, I think most Democrats would want abortion within the first few weeks prior to the development of my personal moral starting point of life, is that the mind is the seat of consciousness, the brain is is where your self is. If you replace your heart, you have a robo heart, you're chilling. If you replace your brain, you're a different person, you're dead. And I think that when that brain first starts to develop, that's sort of where I see the beginning of life and where the fetus gets their first moral consideration. Would you agree that abortion before that point is tolerable?
No, I don't agree with that, but again, quick question, just as far as defining the positions.
Yeah.
So would you agree that late-term abortion is indefensible?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that's not my position.
So then you've already conceded the point, because he's saying Kamala Harris's stance on abortion is morally indefensible. So it doesn't matter where, from a moral standpoint, you view the beginning of life and where you view abortion to be wrong. You agree that late-term abortion is not morally defensible. So, I have a feeling we're going to get a little bit more of that. I was told to watch this next girl as she comes up, so we're going to do that. Let's see.
You made it. You're good. You can relax.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Hello.
He's being so nice to them, so that's good.
Oh wow, you look better in person. Okay, so
It's very sweet of you.
Is that very sweet of her? I don't know.
I don't often get that, so thank you.
Okay, it's fine. How do you define abortion really quickly?
Abortion would be the forcible termination of an unborn human life.
Yes, but why do you hold that definition? Would you not assume something like a C-section would be considered an abortion?
First of all, her hair is eating, okay? I love the look. I love the look on you, but that is actually the definition of abortion. I'm confused here. I don't know where this is going, but that is literally the definition of abortion.
No, because the baby is born alive. So how would that be an abortion?
What does the definition of abortion have to include the death of a fetus?
Because that's literally the definition of abortion.
It literally isn't, though. Where are you getting this definition from?
Wait, what?
Where are you getting your definition from?
What's going on?
Let's go to do you in Mayo Clinic, any fucking hospital you've ever gone to before?
A C-section ends with the birth of the child.
Right, but
I know,
but abortion,
both I and all three of my siblings were born via
generally.
C-section.
Yeah, I understand this.
I'm here. I'm talking to you.
I know, baby.
Thus I was not aborted.
I understand.
Baby, okay. Don't talk to him too slick now. He's married.
I understand this, but no. Well, yes, but no. But no, you could simply say that abortion is simply the ending of a pregnancy, right? So the ending of a pregnancy outside of the natural birth of a fetus. So I don't see that. I don't see why you would say that it would have to end in the death of a fetus, which is why I'm pro-abortion all 9 months, right?
Ooh, it's a good thing that her hair is gorgeous, because what is coming out of her mouth is atrocious. What is she talking about? Where is she getting this definition of abortion? I know damn sure she did not get it from no Mayo Clinic. What is she saying?
Because say if a woman is not able to pass a fetus in the natural way, we can have these other abortion processes that would say she needs some type of induction that doesn't include the actual natural expulsion of a fetus. But it doesn't always end in the death of a fetus. So I don't see how you could say that Kamala Harris' stance is immoral in this sense.
Abortion always ends with the death of the child. Let's just go ahead and clear that up for anybody who's confused on the matter. Abortion always ends with the death of a child. I mean, unless it's a botched abortion. In that case, you didn't get an abortion, technically.
I just don't understand how you're removing the death of the fetus from the equation about abortion. That's literally the entire moral issue. You and I would not even be arguing if we were talking about C-section or about natural birth.
But it seems like at its core, though, we disagree on what the inherent definition of abortion is.
You could leave away. We could very easily solve this. Let's just not talk about the word abortion. Let's talk about the forcible termination of a baby.
Okay. So then, what do you value in the fetus then?
The life of the fetus.
Okay. So then, when is this? You said it begins at conception.
Yes.
And why is that?
Because that is literally the biological definition of when an independent life begins.
Yes, but why does it have moral value?
It has moral value because that's literally the biological definition of when a human life begins.
Right, but why does that have moral value, though?
Okay, why does any life have moral value?
I would value sentience.
But why?
Right, because
based on what?
This is simply what we value, you and I value. Is it okay to unplug a brain dead patient, for example?
I mean, the question is whether it's okay to unplug a brain dead patient. Actually, quite a controversial one in sort of religious circles. Mm-hmm. But as far as why, I'm just wondering if somebody's in a coma and they're going to wake up, do you have the right to unplug them?
Well, coma's not brain death, though. We know that there's future sentience there. It would be a matter of a conjunct of past, future. Past, present, or future sentience. But a person in a coma has. I
agree, and guess what? Fetuses also have guaranteed future sentience.
Well, no, because you're only valuing one half of the conjunct. That's not.
Please,
right?
I need one more red flag up. She's got to go. She's got to go. I'll watch your hair as you walk away, but baby girl, you got to go.
Now you're changing the topic. I mean, we started with what's the value of the fetus.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
There's the flag. Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh, we're gonna move on in just a second. Coop Macchiato says, "Hi, Amala, big fan, but first time catching you live. I appreciate your point of view in these confusing times in the current culture war, and political theater is more common during election years. Grateful for you. Appreciate you so much, Coop. Thank you so much for your super chat." Okay, like I said, I'm not too interested in this abortion back and forth, but I have been told I have to react to Ben Shapiro debating a trans man, so we're gonna skip a little bit ahead to watch that moment. Apparently this gets very heated. All right. Oh,
Wow, okay, we're gonna take
establishing
this chair.
dominance.
Look at that.
Hey, Ben.
Like a bro, my friend. All right.
How's it going?
Like a bro indeed. Emphasis on the like, okay?
Let's break open
So, first
beer or
question,
something.
can men get pregnant?
Men cannot
No.
get pregnant,
No.
Awesome. So,
definitionally.
definitionally, okay.
I legit thought he was about to lift his shirt and have like a pregnant belly and be like, "I can't get pregnant, Ben." That unfortunately did not happen, but that would have been interesting.
Do men experience SA,
Yes.
sexual assault?
Sure.
Got it. What about the existence of trans men?
What about it?
What about the existence? Do you mean women who believe that they are men? What are we talking about here? Women experiencing gender dysphoria?
So my other question is, do you benefit from white supremacy in any way, shape, or form?
I'm going to need more specifics on what you mean by white
Well, here, let me
supremacy.
give it to you then.
Sure, please.
So I'm a transgender man.
Okay.
I've experienced SA.
Okay.
And abortion rights affect me directly. So if we're talking about the American dream that you live, why don't I have access to that? Because there's
How much more of an American dream could you get than being born in a female body and transitioning to be a man? What more of an American dream do you possibly need, my dude?
no legislation, what, in the history of America that legislates a man's body, so why does mine have to be legislated?
The draft. Moving on.
I've got a vagina.
I'm not interested in what your genitalia are.
Clearly you are. I mean, it's all over
my
everything
God.
you make, buddy. I'm sorry. I hate to say it to you, but
I think you can read on my face that I radically am not.
Have.
I think you can read on my face that I radically am not. When we're talking about
No,
abortion,
I don't. I mean, you can present it here, but in most of the content that you have, you attack my community constantly. And you don't even realize guys like me
your
exist
community.
who actually share a lot of similarities to you and everything, because I'm a married man of 20 years.
I've
got
I
a wife.
recognize that you exist. I disagree with your
Right,
claim
so
that you
if
are
I
a male.
was sexually assaulted, right, and I didn't have access to that abortion care, do you believe that I should have carried that child to term because
What does
I was
this have to-
sexually assaulted?
I mean,
No, I just want to make sure that that's what you believe. Because as a transgender man, I have seen your side of the entire political debate, never ever having the conversation of what an American freedom is. Because why am I not allowed to live my American freedom as a man? You know, I mean, you get your choice as a man.
I don't need to re-express what I've already said, but oh my goodness, and I recognize this guy. But we'll get into that in just a moment.
You're really moving around terminology very wildly here,
and so are you, because that's the tactics you play in your game, and you've done it the entire time. You've jumped from one subject to the next. You speak so fast, and I know how you work. So how does it feel to have it in your face?
Wow, it's so interesting because they feel like they're eating right now. They're like, "This, I'm gonna really get Ben Shapiro. I'm so much smarter than him. Trust, you are not." And everybody that's surrounding him, they're acting like middle schoolers. And I don't know how they don't recognize that they lack emotional regulation, but it's very clear. Ben is staying very calm. He's talking to them very respectfully. He's not doing any ad hominem attacks on any of them at this point. And still, they're like barking at him. And this guy is extremely aggressive. But one thing I'll tell you, there's nothing more like feminine than this like faux male posturing that is happening right now. To like go and stand up and flip the chair around and sit on it like you're like some big dude is honestly a pretty feminine thing to go forward and do, but y'all are not ready for that conversation.
Oh, well, I mean,
because I'm sick and tired of the shit that you have put against my community, especially black trans women, because you constantly disregard all of our needs and then use us politically as a pawn when we're 1% of the population. Why not focus on the economy itself? All of us are struggling, and you want to focus on trans people. You want to focus on a black woman when this is clearly a glass cliff situation. America's falling apart, and let's give it to a woman right when it's all falling apart, when we'd had, what, 50 men run it and it looks like shit? Look at where we're at.
Oh gosh, the lack of logic is astounding, and it actually speaks to this person's current identity. I've got to say it.
Really, where do you think that we're heading? I mean, it's so funny to watch white supremacy just fall apart the way that it is, and you ride so hard. Because guess what? In other countries around the world, women are not having children. And why is it? Because of the patriarchy and all the violence that men perpetuate, and all of this idea that abortion is somehow gonna solve it all by forcing women to have abortion instead of focusing on the real problems that we're facing in our society. We're just gonna completely ignore that, and we're just gonna go, you know what? The line item is, let's make women have babies so that we can continue this capitalistic society that we have. Ooh. Why are we doing that?
Ooh.
What? I mean, why? Because you want to push white supremacy and because you want to make your check? It does great for you. Meanwhile, people like me have to live with the consequences of all of your rhetoric that you put on a daily basis, and including my.
As soon as he goes to speak, he has to speak over him. There's so much insecurity baked into this rant that this guy's putting on, or a woman, should I say, that you can't even allow a little bit of airtime for him to respond to you, because you know you're not going to like what is said, and you know that you don't have much grounds for the things that you're saying. It's really, really wild. Super unhinged, but again, speaks to the current identity that this person is living with.
Entire community, and the intersectionalities of black women, men that experience SA, trans people, everyone that comes in. And I'm so sick of the idea that you can come in with this bravado, that you're this big guy that knows things because you can talk fast, you have statistics.
Did he come in with this bravado? Did he mean to say vibrato? I don't, like, what is he trying to say? I don't, First of all, and who came in like a big guy who knows everything? You did when you came in and you picked the chair up and flipped it around. I'm seeing a lot of projecting in this whole speech that we're getting right now, and somebody needs to just hold a mirror up to this individual. Ben should say nothing. Just hold up a mirror.
Statistics, but really, what does it really matter at the end of the day if you are harming the entire American? This guy's been accused of rape. Trump in like court documents, and you're backing the guy.
Because an accusation is a reflection of reality. You know that Joe Biden has also been accused of sexual assault. So what do you have to say about that? He's your current sitting president. I imagine that most of the people in this room supported Joe Biden. What's going to happen there? We're also hearing some, alleged stories of Kamala Harris and Diddy parties. So what are you going to have to say about that when we start having the real conversation?
Like, you have children. How could you do that to your own? Don't you have a daughter? Like, what is wrong with you, dude?
Don't you have a daughter?
I've never seen such a party just completely like the American idea, what we believe in as a country, is not what you're perpetuating. It's diversity. It's giving you tired, hungry, and poor. The Google phone you have in your pocket is because of all of the diversity we've had.
Pause.
Bye.
Pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, you dick. Holds out the hand and walks away. And still, we have not seen even a minuscule example of any disrespect whatsoever from Ben Shapiro to any of these people. They don't have any ideas that they want to bring forward to him that he can actually contend with. They just want to tell him that they hate what he stands for. And this person is dealing with a whole lot internally. They've got their own journey to go on, and it seems like they're projecting a lot of what they're dealing with internally on to Ben Shapiro. But again, no argument was made. There's nothing to really go back and forth on because you didn't even allow him the time to speak to you. You wanted to take this moment to crush him, to bulldoze him, and I'm gonna state it again, in a very feminine way. Like, if I asked a woman to pretend to be a man with, the little access that we have to the male brain and what men are experiencing, that's exactly the kind of theater that would be produced. And we all watched it there. So, I mean, I don't even know where to begin or end with what I just watched, but I am glad that I got to witness that. We're going to read some of your super chats. Sorry, I'm not going to get to all of you today. Will Roke says, you should have your evil twin or Dean on your show, or are you scared to get flamed too? They're invited. Please, to get flamed by her, that would be a feat. That would be a feat. Marquise Obscurite says, fun fact, a patriarchal society called Mexico has a high birth rate as opposed to an egalitarian society as Sweden. By that definition, patriarchy is succeeding. You can also hear my dog Wemby in the background that is just yapping, wants everybody to know that he's here, that he is in the house. We'll read one more super chat. This one is from Gilbert Gonzalez. He says, Shane's from the trans liberal versus trans conservative debate where he jealously insulted Blair White for having the large platform he wants. He sat for his pick-me moment to insult Ben and not to have a conversation. It does seem that way. And if I remember, I've also seen him on a podcast with Blossom, who we've had on the show before. And they went back and forth, and Blossom told this whole lie about me and the show. We did a whole video on that. You guys can check it out because I had the tea and I had all the receipts of what Blossom was talking about and very much decided to lie. We're going to skip ahead to another prompt because I'm done with the abortion. This is claim 3.
Is Kamala Harris's border policies will turn America into an unsafe and bankrupt nation.
I will let some of my colleagues here in the circle really talk about why they appreciate Kamala Harris's right shift when it comes to border policy, trying to deter the amount of people that are coming through the southern border. That's not something I'm particularly passionate about. So I'm more inclined to talk about specifically why you, somebody who purports himself as someone who's uber capitalist, want to remove the labor pool from this country, which always increases to business and economic growth.
Right. So I'm not interested in removing the labor pool from the country as a general rule. However, I don't believe that it's an economic benefit to the United States to bring in a low skill, low education labor pool that is drawing significantly from public benefits. For example, there are very good data to show that there's huge reliance on, say, emergency rooms, educational facilities. Based on the Center for Immigration Studies, there's a net cost to low-wage, low-skill immigration coming into the country.
So you're in favor with emergency rooms just deterring people based on what they look like or what might be perceived as someone with a lack of citizenship?
No.
When did he say that? These people get so offended. It's like they hear something, they interpret it in the most racist, radical way they possibly can, and they throw it back at you as if it's something that you just said, and that is not what he said at all. Also, there are tons of different things that a society could do to boost its economy and bring in labor. It doesn't mean that it's healthy for the overall society. So I'm not understanding what the point is we're making, but we'll allow it to continue.
I'm very much in favor of limiting the amount of illegal immigration to zero and then allowing a fair bit of legal immigration.
So you're more interested in decreasing the pool of people and population in this country so there are less emergency room visits? Or are you more in favor of actually documenting these people so we're able to track like exactly who is coming through? Like, I'm kind of lacking what your argument is.
It's not about number. It's about the people who are coming in. I believe that everybody who comes into this country should come in through a legal mechanism, and that the United States ought to be able to select the people who are coming in, who are the best, brightest, and most useful to the American population, because that is the prerogative of any nation.
So do you think that the way that we do allow people in through our legalization process, especially with how much egregious obstacles people have to go through, might incentivize people to come through non-legal means?
I mean,
On average, it takes about 10 years for somebody to gain citizenship in this country. And if somebody is fleeing political persecution, I really find it interesting how conservatives always like to talk about the response to certain behaviors instead of what the root cause is. When oftentimes United States foreign policy is what creates the destabilization of countries, which is why people try to come to places where they can't get economic benefit. I mean, your employee, Matt Walsh, was kind of schooled on this with Ryan Grimm, where he talked about specifically Haitian policy, where the government of Haiti has been destabilized over and over again by Western imperial nations. So that those citizens are trying to flee something with political persecution.
I mean, is it your contention that anytime there's a destabilized nation across the world, even if the United States had a hand in it, then we then have a moral obligation to take in every citizen of that country who wishes to flee?
No, I don't even have to say anything. I can just just let Ben go. Just let Ben
I think
go.
that's a huge straw man. I'm not saying that every single person from a destabilized country needs to take refuge in the United States, but I think it's important to add that context so you can understand why people are coming here.
That's a case for a different foreign policy. That's not a case for an immigration policy.
The idea is people are coming in here to mooch off of our emergency rooms or mooch off of our social services,
No, I don't think
which
that's
is just
true.
not true at all.
I mean, no,
that's your big contention for why you're...
That is not my contention.
Okay,
My contention
I'll let you
is,
speak.
I'm not claiming that the intent of people is to mooch off the system. The result of people is that they may be a net draw on benefits rather than a net contributor to the economy of the United States or to the culture of the United States, because I want people who are coming here who actually have some sort of belief in, say, American-style freedoms. I don't think everybody from all over the world has the same ideology
So
as
you're aligning with Nick Fuentes that like a lot of these people just don't have the exact same culture. These people don't have culture and they can't come here. I know that you're making that face. I know that he's an individual that you guys obviously disagree. He's somebody that's like increases calls for violence against people of certain communities.
So then why did you bring him up as a means of connecting and associating these two with one another? You know exactly what you were doing, and now that you've gotten this reaction, you're trying to roll it back?
I'm not saying that you're identical,
Fuentes,
but I'm saying on this issue particular,
he literally makes videos trying to stab me. So
see this disdain in your face, though? Like, this is the type of disdain I have for the exact ideology that you guys are in agreement.
I don't understand why there is anything wrong with the idea that you ought to screen people
can
for their viewpoint. Of course people can assimilate, but you ought to select from a pool of people who are most likely to assimilate. That doesn't mean that everybody has it. Do you think everybody on Earth has an equivalent ideology? Try and get into the country? We shouldn't screen for ideology at all.
How would you screen for ideology? Like a basic test to show what people actually value when it comes to attributes?
Sure.
What would that test look like?
I mean, I think that would look very much like a citizenship test.
But this is not determining the ideologies of this person coming in. This is a determination.
I mean, they at least have to understand the
that
basic,
people can actually have.
No, but people would actually have to understand the basic ideology.
How many U.S.-born citizens do you think could pass a citizenship test?
That's an indictment on the U.S. American, the American education system than it is on immigration and the citizenship test in itself. You know, if you have somebody who's coming into the country and they're like, you know what, I think we should stone women in the square when they're raped. I think we should go, maybe you shouldn't be here. I think women should be covered from head to toe and shouldn't even be able to show their ankles. And I think we can gang rape 12-year-olds. I think you should go. I think the illegal immigrants that come into this country with a criminal record, or they enter this country and go ahead and commit more crimes, further than the crime of entering the country in the first place, you should probably go. I think that's evidence of a failure to assimilate. And I think we were screening for these individuals prior to everything that's going on now. Not, at 100% effectiveness, but far more effective than we've been in the last 3.5 years. So what is it that's happened recently? And are these people saying that the millions of people that have entered through our southern border the past 3.5 years, all of that's okay? All of that's fine? These 100% preventable crimes that are committed by illegal immigrants, that's okay with you? The human trafficking is okay with you? The drug trafficking is okay with you? The kids that are sexually assaulted and raped on their journey to the southern border, that's okay with you? I just don't know how we can't be normal in conversation about this and point out that these are real deal human atrocities that are taking place in the name of illegal immigration, and say that something needs to be done about it. And we can understand having an open heart and wanting people to seek out opportunities in this nation and be able to work and contribute to our society. And it seems as though Ben is fully open to that. But they have to go through a screening process, and they have to be tracked. We have to know who these people are, where they're coming from, where they're going to, what their criminal record is. And the way we have it set up now, we're not doing so good. Not too hot. Also, if you think these people aren't burdening the system, I don't know what to tell you. They're getting SNAP, EBT, apartments paid for. They're getting phones, plane rides, bus tickets to wherever they want. Now, they may not be fully overloading the American system, but that is certainly your taxpayer dollars going to people who enter this country on an illegal basis. Kimberly May says, longtime fan and love your work. I'm mixed American Chilean. By their logic, I need someone who has that exact breakup of genetics to represent me. That's an impossibility. Race and ethnicity should never supersede morality. 100%. People share ideas and values. That's what matters. Beyond that, your race and your genetic makeup don't.
Good to meet you.
Kamala Harris supports the bipartisan border bill that was negotiated by conservative Senator James Lankford and supported by Mitch McConnell. Do you not support that bill? And
I do not support that bill.
So what is your solution then?
I mean, my solution is that this actually ought not be done in a comprehensive fashion. So I have a general critique of the way that we deal with immigration in the country. Instead of trying to solve all problems at once, which is very likely to end in nothing, what we ought to first do is we ought to close the border.
And but then the border is closed right now. Do you agree?
The border is certainly not closed right now.
What do you mean? There's a small trickle of people coming over. The numbers are similar to the end of the Trump administration, no?
Well, now because of executive order, they have been reduced significantly, but...
Do you not agree that they're the same number as the end of the Trump administration?
Right now,
yes.
It is on a monthly basis, but that's after letting in 6.5 million illegal immigrants.
So do you think Trump was failing then at the end of his administration?
I think that Donald Trump did a better job than Joe Biden. He certainly did not do a perfect job on illegal immigration.
So Joe Biden is matching what Donald Trump is doing right now. So you applaud Joe Biden?
After letting in 6.5 to 11 million illegal immigrants, I don't think you get to fill in that gap by doing it like 4 months of good border policy.
Those are border encounters. We don't know how many of those people were turned away. We don't know how many of those people are still in this country. But those people make up a significant portion of our labor force as well, including in states like yours, Florida, where they make up like 5%.
So your argument is that it's not happening and it's good that it is.
It's not happening? What do you mean?
That the illegal immigration pool is not very large, and also it's good that it is large.
I'm saying you guys make up numbers all the time. It's like 20, 30 million.
No, that's from the Wall Street Journal. I'm not making up that number.
Well, Donald Trump said he wants to deport 20 million of these guys. What do you think of that?
I mean, I think that if we were going to look at deportations, we obviously ought to tranche that out based on criminal record. We ought to tranche it out based on usefulness to the economy. I think we ought to look at each person individually and determine whether they ought to be deported or not.
So that is probably going to lead to a small trickle of people being kicked out of here. So that's not going to accomplish your goal.
Well, I mean, who said that my goal was to mass deport 20 million people?
So you want 20 million undocumented immigrants to stay in America?
No.
Wow, it's so crazy that they can't think logically through what is being said. And it's just like they want to say an inconsistent thing with what he's just expressed in hopes that he'll just like trip over his own logic and grant what they're saying when they're in no way tracking with the statements that are coming out of his mouth. It's crazy.
No, that is not what I'm saying. I failed to see how you got from, I would like to go through one by one in the same way that we do IRS tax forms for literally every American who pays taxes in the United States and go through illegal immigrants and determine who ought to stay in the country and who not ought to stay in the country.
So what army is going to go over these 20 million people and with what resources? Where are you going to detain them? How are you going to get them out of the country?
I mean,
maybe the taxpayer dollars that we're spending on illegal immigration, which is like what? Like $150 billion went to migrants, I believe, in 2023. So maybe we could use that money. Also, didn't the IRS just hire like 86,000 IRS agents? I think like we've got the bureaucracy of things and expanding it pretty much figured out. And I think we could do that for ICE and our immigration system and Border Patrol.
You'll detain them and you'll deport them, increasing the resources of ICE. The biggest problem with regard
ICE, similar to the bill that was rejected by you and...
Well, I mean, you're neglecting the part of the bill that allowed a baseline of 5,000 illegal immigrants border encounters before the executive branch automatically kicked in border enforcement.
Exactly.
So I've been down to the border,
agree
okay? I went down to the border, and let me tell you what I saw at the border, and then we can go, okay? So
that's actually very important to talk about on this bill. Everybody's saying this is a comprehensive bill that would have solved our immigration problem. The bill, nothing really goes into effect unless border crossings have, I guess, 4,000 crossings per day for 7 days. That's when they start going, oh, I think we have a problem here. I think we're going to act on it, which is just an insane thing. And that's why this bill was shot down. And it wasn't shot down because Donald Trump told them to shoot down the bill. Republicans and a few Democrats, by the way, were already voting against this bill in the first place. Not to mention the other pork that was packed in the bill in aid to other places.
Okay, so saw with your own eyes.
But not just saw with my own eyes, talked to the Border Patrol agents. Okay, the way that the Biden administration was treating the border for the vast majority of their term was to treat a claim of asylum without evidence as evidence that the person ought to be given asylum. So the first priority was for Border Patrol to be activated to go to places where Mexican drug cartels were leaving people at the border en masse, and then to process those people and let them into the country within 72 hours. The goal of this for the Mexican drug cartels was to clear large swaths of the border of Border Patrol agents specifically so that in those unoccupied areas, fentanyl and drugs could then be passed, human trafficking could then be passed in those unoccupied areas.
So you mentioned these cartels. You agree these cartels are profiting off human trafficking, right?
Of course.
So why don't we open up legal means for these people to come in here? Then they don't have to give the cartels money. They're making more money off human trafficking right now because of our immigration system doesn't allow more people. And the Republicans do not have a bill to allow more people to come here legally.
I mean, so your answer to illegal immigration is just magically legalize everyone.
No, it's to open up legal paths so these people don't have to leave their livelihood in these countries and carry a bag and walk.
Except we do have legal paths to American citizenship. You can argue that they are maybe a little bit too difficult, or we need to open up, more spots for asylum and things like that. We did have a legal process for our immigration. Now, the answer is not to just allow people to enter all willy-nilly until we figure out just how many people we want to allow through in the legal process. The answer is to figure out the illegal immigration, and once we've got that figured out, after letting tens of millions of people past our southern border, maybe then we can talk about allowing people to come in through a legal process.
To the jungle with their kids.
By the logic that you're using, we could make murder absolutely not a thing by simply pretending that murder is now legal.
What?
Your suggestion is that millions of illegal immigrants.
It's funny because they're laughing, but the laughing actually shows your ignorance. It shows that you can't follow. You can't follow your own logic. That's kind of crazy.
Yes.
Ought to just become legal immigrants, and then magically this would solve the entire problem.
We have failed these people. We have benefited tremendously off exploiting these people. You and I, we have benefited from these people working hard. They just want to be here and be a part of our country. I can't think of anything more American than that.
I'm not doubting the willingness of people to come to the country. I am doubting the incentive structure that draws people to the country with rich array of social benefits that didn't exist.
What is that incentive structure?
That incentive structure is things like Medicaid, things like free schooling.
Do you think someone's going to leave their home in Venezuela to come here and leech off our Medicaid?
Do you think somebody's going to ditch the Maduro diet in Venezuela to come get health care and sell a cell phone and a plane ticket to wherever they want to go and a hotel room? Or they can go to New York and get 7 months rent paid for them and their family. Or maybe they can go to Maine and get 2 years worth of rent paid for by the federal government. Yeah, I think people are going to ditch their life in Venezuela for that.
These people want to work. These people want to live, man.
Okay, then if they sign a contract saying they don't receive social benefits, they're more than welcome to stay.
Oh. Well, sadly, they would take benefits that they were available to them if they could come out of the shadows, and they would actually pay more taxes and contribute more to society.
Come out of the shadows, baby. When was the last time ICE came knocking on anybody's door to deport them? Please. And I remember this because if you watched American sitcoms in the early 2000s, this would be like a plot line. If y'all ever watched Desperate Housewives, y'all remember Gabrielle Solis and the whole daughter switch plot point where they had this Mexican family and they were undocumented, and the big fear was we can't get pulled over by cops, or if we get found out, ICE is going to come and deport us. When have you ever heard a storyline like that or anything like that really happening in the United States as of late? You haven't, because it's not. If anything, if you come here illegally, you get literally patted on the back, given an app that you can download on your phone, and then you're granted a temporary protective status like they did for hundreds of thousands of Haitians coming into this country. That is where is that? Where's that photo? Boom. That is how I feel about that. I hit the wrong button. Those are my thumbnail photos. But you know what? The emotion still stands.
Let me ask you, if there's
passionate hands, no worries.
If there's an accident, and let's say your wife's in a car accident, the only person that witnessed it is an undocumented immigrant. They're not coming forward to be a witness, Ben. Doesn't that trouble you?
This is the reason that I should allow millions and millions of illegal immigrants into the country. It's on the off chance that they might be a witness.
It's one reason that these people are being treated as second-class citizens, even though they benefit you and I.
Can I ask a question? What is your standard for whether someone should be allowed into the country?
Please.
My standard?
Yes.
What do you mean my standard? Like as far as their education or their ability?
Yes. You're creating immigration policy. Who should be allowed into the country?
I think we should allow a wide variety of people. This country,
everyone.
Not everybody starts out as a doctor, Ben.
So give us a standard. Ben did not say you have to be a doctor to enter the United States. What is your standard for being able to enter?
Some people start out doing menial tasks.
So everyone. So you have no limits. How about numbers? Do you have any number limit? No numerical limit.
20,000 people die or retire in this country a day. There's only 10,000 births. We need more people.
I agree. That's why we should all have more babies.
So, okay, well, guess what? People aren't going to have them because you're not incentivizing it. Kamala Harris is with her things like $6,000 child tax credit. Meanwhile, you guys are just trying to cause more problems and make it harder for people to raise families.
Okay, as a person with 4 children, I can promise you I have a very, very strong incentive structure in allowing people to have more kids and incentivizing people to have more kids. I wish that government benefits were more effective in doing this. They simply have not been in particular areas of Europe. There's a different argument than the illegal immigration argument. When we're talking about illegal immigration, you seem to be making an argument there ought to be no baseline standard for who gets in and no baseline cap for how many people get in.
Okay, well, we'll pause and give him a moment to think about what his standard is going to be. Trinity Gomez says, first time super chat, that Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua, I hope I pronounced that right, was arrested in my city, and it just made that situation so much more real for me. Yeah, I imagine it would. When you hear the stories of people getting their apartment complexes taken over by these gangs, it's just astounding to hear about. And of course, JD Vance goes on the news to talk about it. And the lady says, oh, it's the news anchor. It's just a handful of apartment complexes. And JD's like, do you hear what you just said? It's just a handful of apartment complexes being taken over by foreign gangs that entered this country illegally? Are we being so for real right now? Oh my gosh.
Not saying that. So we can come up with a figure. We can come up with numbers. So I'm not a lawmaker. That's what we elect people to go do and work out those figures.
I need
Republicans are just fighting everything.
I need some standard.
You need me to come up with a number.
No. Okay, a number or a characteristic or some sort of standard for who you would let into the country. Because right now, all I'm hearing is you just want lots of people to come into the country without any standard and any cap on the number.
No, not at all. I want people to come here who want to work, who want to be a part of this country, and we all benefit from that.
Okay,
Do you think you're not benefiting from these undocumented people?
He never said that. Sarah Marie Olsen Strixrud, I hope I said that right. I don't think I did. Life wants to live. Cryptic but profound.
Things going to build the houses that we need with our shortage.
So do you think the people who come into the country should be eligible for all social benefits?
If they're contributing and they're allowed to contribute fully, right now they're not. They're using other people's Social Security numbers to pay Social Security tax and Medicare, and they're not able to get those benefits in the long run.
So that's an argument for immigration reform on a legal basis. It's not an argument for allowing anybody and their mother and brother to jump our southern border, which doesn't involve a lot of jumping. If you've seen the fencing that exists at the southern border prior to Trump's border wall being started to be constructed.
So again, I'm wondering how you're balancing the cost benefit to the American body politic if what you're suggesting is that day one you arrive in the country and now you're eligible for all social benefits.
I'm not saying day one you're
with no
eligible
education,
to all social
low wage
benefits.
labor.
Well, we can work all these details out. You're fighting over the
that's the core of the argument.
Really? You're upset that somebody who comes to this country and works hard and makes your life better and cheaper is going to get Social Security 40 years from now?
No, not Social Security 40 years from now. Medicaid today.
So wouldn't you rather than get Medicaid and get preventative care than go to the hospital where it costs you,
I would prefer
the taxpayer, 10 times more money?
My point, as it has been from the beginning, is that you need screening procedures for immigration.
So you're saying Border Patrol is...
This guy is very emotional, very heated. We can calm down.
Failing then to screen these people properly? Is that the accusation you're making?
They all hate him so much. They can't. They're seething. Their blood is boiling, and the hot air is coming out of their mouth. It's actually kind of wild to watch the body language here.
I'm making the case that Border Patrol certainly is failing.
How do you know that? Because you talked to a couple Border Patrol agents? You know, that is so insulting to our Border Patrol's fight.
Oh, it's so insulting to our Border Patrol. You know how Border Patrol agents feel right now? They feel like, in a lot of ways, they're in danger with the current policy that's taking place, with how radical things have become at the southern border. That's why Border Patrol is endorsing Donald Trump. So even Border Patrol thinks that something needs to change. So no, it's not insulting to Border Patrol to have this conversation. They've been handcuffed when it comes to doing their job, when they should be handcuffing people that are trying to enter this country illegally, and specifically gang members, MS-13, these Venezuelan gangs. That's what should be happening. So yeah, even Border Patrol agrees with what Benny Boy is saying.
Fighting every day on the front lines. You think they're not screening these people and they're being bamboozled by some people claiming asylum and tricking them?
No, because literally today, the FBI announced that an Afghan national was let in without vetting and tried to plan a terrorist attack on election day.
One guy.
Oh, it's just one. So
one guy. You know how many terrorists?
They let in one terrorist. They let in one guy screaming death to America. I'm going to suicide bomb myself at the first opportunity. That's not actually what he said. Don't quote me on that. I'm just saying. One guy. It's very similar to what that news lady, I forget what her name said, what her name was. My apologies. It's just a handful of apartment buildings. Guys, please. Somebody said this guy was going to cook Ben. Where? Again, I'm starving. Mike Bickle says, I'm horrified at the world leftists are making for my daughter, Toria, and that just turned 1 on the 4th and started walking, but she's amazing. Ah, well, congratulations on your 1-year-old, and I hope we can make the world better for her. Let's keep watching.
We're caught by the border under Trump?
There are over
zero.
There are over 3.
At least we're catching them.
There are over There are over first of all.
Dude, it's kind of like, like when the class clown would like make a joke in class or like whisper something under their breath about the teacher and the whole class is like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's exactly what's happening here.
First of all, it's not true because a huge number of people, we don't know who they are coming across the border between ports of entry. Second of all, you're talking in this country right now at least 300,000 minors. We have no idea where they are.
Oh, that is nonsense. That is nonsense. No, it is. It is ICE has lost track of them because it's voluntary for them to keep in touch with the system. They are not lost. They're released to their sponsors who have to go through background checks. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay. He did not say that the minors were lost. We're going to get there in just a moment. Arthur says, I was debating one of my leftist friends and they said we should let anyone in. When I asked if she leaves her doors unlocked at night, she said, no, of course not. Basic security has nothing to do with border control. Insanity. Yeah, the lack of common sense. Common sense is not so common these days. Now, what Ben just said there about the 300,000 undocumented minors is that we have no idea where they are. This is very different from maybe other rhetoric you might have heard on the right. I believe J.D. Vance, don't quote me on that, says they are missing or lost, which is a little bit of a more extreme interpretation of what Ben said. It's true. They have no idea where they are, 300,000 of them, because they come through the border. As this guy says, in many cases, they are handed off to sponsors. And then on a voluntary basis, they say, hey, you guys got to come back and check in with us. Do they come back and check in? No, they absolutely don't. So what Ben just said is correct.
Well, they don't. You think 300,000 minors are lost in America? Are you crazy?
I'm saying
he didn't say lost. And it's so interesting because, the laughing is actually out of deep insecurity. You'll notice that throughout this, Ben maybe gets to an elevated response time, or he's coming back quickly or jumping into the conversation quickly, but his temperament isn't changing. It's because he feels secure in what he's saying and what he's defending. They feel so insecure about the points that they're making that they have to laugh and spit and just be snarky towards him because it's really all they have at the end of the day, to call him crazy, to call him a white supremacist, and to make fun of him.
I'm not saying that. The Department of Justice is saying that.
Next thing you're going to tell me there's 19,000 murderers, right? Is that the next talking point?
No, that is not the next talking point.
Okay.
But you're going to have to explain to me why it is okay for literally tens of thousands of minors to be checked out to majors, to people who are above majority age, and then for the government to not, when I say lose track, I don't mean minors
checked out to their sponsor who goes through a background check. Is that what you mean?
They do not go through.
How do you know that?
Because they're not checking in. A huge number of people.
Oh, it's voluntary. Why does our law allow for it to be voluntary then if it's not working?
The law should not allow for it to be voluntary.
Oh.
And in fact, in some cases, it is not voluntary.
So,
and in fact, human trafficking is going on at scale.
It sounds like you're upset when the problem doesn't exist. What is this problem?
Why are you okay with minors who are being checked out to people of majority age who then don't check in with the government? Is that okay with you?
I'm okay with minors being checked out to their sponsors who go through background checks, who are usually family members, people that know them. You think it's just some random?
Okay. Let's grant everything that he's saying, that these 300,000 children have been handed off to a sponsor that has gone through a preliminary background check. You give them the child and they say, okay, looks like you got your background checked. And I guess it says that this is your little cousin, Jimmy. Okay, here's Jimmy. You don't ever have to check back in with us ever again. We're not going to follow up after we've just handed you a minor that you're claiming to be your family member. Just go on and take the kid with you. That's the system that this guy wants moving forward. We should do no further check-ins with a random kid who has gone through an egregious, awful journey to our southern border, who's now been handed off to a family member that they may or may not have seen in how many years? How many years has the family member been in the U.S.? How well established is this relationship? We're just going to hand you off because we did a background check. That's absolutely insane to me.
I can go pick up a undocumented immigrant child right now?
No, but I do know that has happened to tens of thousands of kids in this country.
Really? So you think they're just being released to random people?
They're being.
And it's so interesting because they're all laughing and sneering at what Ben is saying right now. Even if you truly don't think what he's saying is true, what if it is? What if right now you are laughing at tens of thousands of kids who are being trafficked throughout the United States and handed off to people that may or may not be their relative? Never mind, what if they are being handed off to relatives, but relatives that are abusive, relatives that are moving to all different parts of the United States, as many of these families are, and not being checked back in on to see if, hey, are we still in a healthy spot here? I know you just went through a tough journey and we handed you off to some rando. why is that not concerning at all to you?
At least to people who claim that they are relatives, and in many cases they are not necessarily relatives.
How do you know that?
Because they are not checking in for their follow-up appointments.
Oh, because they're not checking in for the voluntary follow-up appointments. So you're assuming the worst. You're assuming they're probably being kidnapped and trafficked at this point.
I'm happy for you that you're assuming the best as to what happens with minor children.
Exactly. Why are you assuming the best?
I'm always going to assume the best about my fellow Americans. And of course, if these people are their sponsors and their background
except they're not your fellow Americans.
Checks by these agencies, I'm going to assume the best. Unlike you, that's a weird thing to assume all this weird stuff.
No, actually, what's kind of weird to me is that you assume that anybody who picks up a kid without proper verification and background check doesn't check in for months at a time.
Proper verification and background check?
Let's talk about one story of a young girl who made her way to our southern border, was captured, I guess if you want to call it, by Border Patrol through one of the access ports, ended up undergoing a medical examination. They found tens of different male DNAs inside this minor's body. Now, I don't know what happened to her after that story. This is just things that we're hearing from Border Patrol as they're experiencing this and as they're coming across these kids. Let's just hand them off to somebody, to a sponsor, and never check back in on them. The rate of sexual assault of not only just young girls and young women and women in general, but also young boys in crossing the southern border is very high. And there's a lot of just awful stories. I encourage all of you to listen to Mayorkas as he is testifying in front of the Senate, and the Senate is going over the different reports they've heard of what these migrants experience at the border. And then these people are handed off to what? Family members? These minors?
What do you know about the parents? What do you know about the people who are bringing them up? What do you know about the cousins?
I've read that these people go through background checks and they are sponsors, usually family members. You don't sound like you read anything about this. You just have some fantasy you made up about me being able to go pick up an undocumented child. Why don't you and I go try to get one later? We'll see what happens.
I have a question.
To joke about this is just, it's actually insane. It's actually insane. And this is like the people who are claiming to be empathetic, so empathetic that they just write off everybody as a fantastic person when minors are involved. When I'll remind you, the U.S. has the highest rate of human trafficking when compared to any other country. So to just brush this off as if it is not happening is actually so disgusting, so distasteful.
I have a question. Where are you possibly coming up with that, since I've actually said the opposite?
You want me to name the article? You can go Google it yourself. Maybe you'll learn something.
Which article specifically are you talking about?
Man, when you get home, go on Google and type in, how are undocumented migrants' children released and what is the process? You'll read all about it.
I can read all about it. And one of the things that I've read is that the immigration services in this country have not done proper follow-up.
What, you read it on Gateway Pundit or
No,
what?
on Wall Street Journal, at the Department of Justice, in all of the legal claims by the federal government. Yes, this is in the New York Times. Okay,
So I just want to make sure we're on the same page. 300,000 children are being exploited in America right now.
That is not the claim.
Okay,
the claim is that the federal government does not know where they are.
Oh,
that is the claim, and that is absolutely valid. Do you know where they are? Do you think the federal government knows where all of them are?
The federal government should be tracking
everybody? I think that the federal government has a responsibility to release children who come across the border only to people for whom there is follow-up available. Yes, and I find it very bizarre that you're totally fine with people signing off on handing over children to people who merely claim to be relatives without any follow-up whatsoever.
Why do you say merely claim? You don't know what that background check is like.
Because usually you should have evidence.
And this guy does. This guy knows.
That is in fact the case.
How do you know it's not?
Why is the assumption that it is?
Your claim is that people are taking out kids like library books and not providing the proper identification and background.
And we also have trends of this whole like separating families things that it was brought up during the Trump administration, and even Melania came out against Trump in her recent book saying I didn't agree with what was happening there at all. A large part of why that was happening was that people were coming to the southern border claiming to be family members of these minors and claiming to be accompanying them to connect them with other family in the United States. And guess what? They weren't family members. Turns out you can exploit children and take children on very dangerous journeys where they are trafficked across the southern border. Turns out when you're a grown man who is maybe a member of a gang and is going to want to further that criminal activity here in the United States, it's pretty clever to take a child with you and say, this is my son or my nephew or my cousin. And you arrive at the southern border and say that to them, and you gain a little bit more sympathy, don't don't you?
Lack of concern about what happens to those kids when proper verification and follow-up is not done seems disquieting
because you guys create fantasy scenarios where things that aren't happening. Are there cases where some children are going to be exploited? Of course, there's.
And the real twisted part about this is none of these children can advocate for themselves. They're coming from a foreign country in the United States. They don't know our legal processes. They don't know the protections that they should be awarded here. And unfortunately, there are protections that they're not given under this current border policy. And these are the most vulnerable people among our society. It doesn't matter if you're an American child, a foreign child, children deserve to be protected. And the fact that he's just laughing in the face of very valid concerns when it comes to the lives of minors is so disgusting.
Tons of people in this country. We're the third largest country in the world.
So what should we do to stop that?
Well, you sound very passionate about this. Maybe you should write your Congress member and say we should tighten up these laws and make it mandatory instead of voluntary.
You know, in order to do that, one of the things you might want to do, close the border.
The border is closed, Ben.
No, it is certainly not.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It is certainly not closed.
Do you think the border was closed under Trump?
No, I don't think it was fully closed under Trump.
Oh, so you say Trump failed at closing the border?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
Donald Trump should have done more to close the border.
Why would you want him back in there if he's going to fail again?
Because he did a better job than Joe Biden, who let in 6.5 million illegal immigrants.
Joe Biden has the exact same border encounters right now as Trump at the end of his administration.
I have a question.
If Trump was on pace to let in 900,000, if that was the case, a year.
I have a question for you.
Dude, we've let in like 10 million over the past 3.5 years. What is your point? And the fact that Biden and Kamala are deciding to, quote, fix the border problem at the very end of their term and in the middle of an election cycle, that doesn't really speak to their character or speak to their capability of actually doing anything about this problem or caring about this problem at all. Veronica says that this level of ignorance from the leftists is so scary. It's as if they live on a different planet. Sometimes it does feel that way with some of these people.
Sure. Why is it that after a president allows in, through pure executive order negligence, having walked back the executive orders that created the policies that you're now praying.
Negligence.
I mean, if you want to call it purposeful, call it purposeful. They were, on day one, they were negged on Remain in Mexico. They changed the standards by which asylum was claimed.
Mexico's got to play. It takes two to tango. Mexico didn't want anything to do with Remain in Mexico.
Remain in Mexico was the American policy. It was Joe Biden who walked out on Remain in Mexico.
There's also a small number of people. It's like a couple tens of thousands of people.
A small number of apartment buildings. It's one terrorist screaming death to America. It's just a small, tens of thousands of illegal immigrants that would impact.
The unprecedented level of illegal immigration is apparently totally fine with you under Joe Biden.
No, listen, we need more people in this country, Ben. There's no legal
so it's fine with you.
Means for them to come in that are reasonable.
That
so
is
these
not
people
true.
are forced to
That
come
is
in
not
through the
true.
southern border because there's no other way.
There are hundreds of thousands of people who come into this country every year legally on visas.
Yes, and that process is difficult. We need a lot more people than hundreds of thousands.
So you're making a case for broadening legal immigration,
Yes.
but you are not setting any standard or numbers by which we are supposed to adjudicate whether this is good or bad.
That's not my job. All I know is it's too difficult
So
right
you're not
now.
making an argument at all. You're making an argument that basically we should just legalize everybody who wants to come into the country.
Not at all. I'm fine with the number.
Hold on.
We
You have
come
not
up
said
with a
you have not set a number. You have not set a standard. You have suggested you're utterly fine with what happens to minors if they are released to adults without proper evidence.
I have not.
You have not. You have suggested that there is no major problem with exploitation of children being trafficked over the border.
I'll go with Trump's number, 1 million a year, because that's what he was on pace to let in by the end of his administration. 75,000 a month.
Okay, well, let's time that by 10 and then talk about this current administration. How do you feel about it? If you're willing to go with Trump's number, how do you feel about Biden's? And how do you feel about your willingness to support Kamala Harris, who was, honestly, well, the border czar. She was the one who was supposed to have this under control.
Month equals 900,000.
Wowie, wow.
Good for you, dude.
Oh, when I recognize this guy, he's not going to be nice.
Meet you.
Wait, what did I just hear?
Good for you, dude.
Tara, to meet you.
Did he just say terrible to meet you? Chat, confirm this. Did he just say terrible to meet you? And Ben is handling that very nicely if that's just what just came out of his mouth.
So I'm just really unclear about what of her policies do you think are bad? Because I'm not sure I heard that yet.
Okay, the revocation. So I think first we have to define what we think her policies are.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so there is the policy that was implemented under Joe Biden, and then there's the policy that she seems to have adopted over the course of the last 45 to 60 days when she was actually running for president, where she seems to have adopted many of the prior immigration policies of the Trump administration. So which one do you think is actually her position is sort of the open question about Kamala Harris? I'm assuming that the record of the Biden administration provides a pretty good track record as to what she would do with the border were she made president.
I mean, I think what's really clear that I feel like you've overlooked a lot is that a lot of the things that Joe Biden has done that you don't love are because he first tried to do things the right way through legislation. But Congress won't do it. So I guess my question for you is when
did he try to do things the right way? Like on day one as president, Joe Biden and his administration rolled over what, 90 executive orders that impacted the border, that had the border way more under control than what we've seen during this current presidential term. Tijuana border jumper says, I needed my blood pressure medicine from that. Ooh, I'm feeling it too. Trying to remain calm with some of the things that I'm hearing here. Hundri Marquina says they usually rent babies to ask. Oh, they rent babies to ask for money at traffic lights here. I can see them using children to cross the border and then dumping them. Yeah, I would not be surprised at all. Of course, we've heard of like the coyotes and all these different things. And of course, that whole separation of children, as heinous as it may seem to many, was not for no reason at all. Boot in a Boot says running to the chair is negative like a billion aura. It is indeed.
Would your plan be for Kamala if not to try to get a law through Congress when Congress won't pass them?
I'm perfectly happy for trying to get a law through Congress, provided I, actually like the law. I mean,
yeah, sure.
But if you're talking about what she could do day one, I mean, she could actually continue to enforce the newfound enthusiasm for border security in the run-up to the election that Joe Biden has now implemented.
Well,
so remain in Mexico, revise asylum, and all the rest of that.
Setting aside your characterization,
I mean, that's actually what he did.
How? Sure.
Okay.
Remain
in Mexico,
which is fraught with rape. Remain in Mexico has been found to be really dangerous for the people who are stuck there.
Okay, and it is also a fact of the matter that if you're talking about controlling the border, remain in Mexico is a better way to control the border than simply releasing people into the interior with a come back to court date.
So you feel that would be better than, say, funding border security and related agencies to house those people safely?
It is generally not a matter of funding at the border. It really is not.
Then what is it?
It is a matter of how asylum is actually interpreted. So the way that asylum was interpreted for a long time was that you had to show by a preponderance of the evidence that you actually had a legitimate asylum claim.
That's not that different now. And it's not that different. No.
Yeah.
This claim is over.
It is that different now. I mean, just look at the TPS and the CBP app that J.D. Vance was talking about in the vice presidential debate. It is wildly different from what it used to be, but...
Oh, I'm sorry about that. It's getting good, though.
And I think we're going to skip this last prompt and move to what they do at the end of these episodes, where they allow somebody to come up and debate Ben. Because, guys, it's 7:20. We gotta get a move on.
Commit to a peaceful transfer.
Ooh, let's see. We're going to get Tyler's claim. I haven't seen Tyler this whole episode, so I wonder how we came to the conclusion to pick him. But
my claim is that Donald Trump did not commit to a peaceful transfer of power.
Okay, January 6th. Love it.
Okay, so yeah, I think it's simple. I think Trump helped facilitate a fake electric scheme to override the election in 2020, to have Mike Pence not certify the election, and then allowed violence to happen at the Capitol. So Donald Trump gave a speech for an hour and a half where he would say things like, fight like hell, they're stealing the country away from us. And then
he also told people to peacefully protest. I mean, I don't know. We always go back and forth on January 6th, and I think like J.D. Vance has the best answer. He's like, I'm focused on the future. And the future is either a Kamala Harris presidency or it's a Trump presidency. And I don't know about y'all, but I'll take Donald Trump over Kamala Harris on any given day of the week, at any given moment. 25-8. 366.
And when people got to the Capitol, Donald Trump sat there for 3 hours and watched them. When his aides, his family, and everyone was telling him, put a stop to the violence, call them, tell them to go home. He did not. And I think that is an example of Trump not committing to the peaceful transfer of power. He was allowing the violence to happen when he could have stopped it.
But was Joe Biden inaugurated? So where was the lack of commitment? I mean, it's a half-assed effort if he really wasn't committing to the peaceful transfer of power. Pepper says, America should put America first. How can we help anyone else if we don't? Pepper, I agree with you.
Okay, so as far as allowing the violence to happen when he could have stopped it, I'm wondering exactly what he could have done given the fact that the Capitol Police were activated, in fact, pretty quickly in the middle of that debacle. As far as not committing to the peaceful transfer of power, do we mean verbally or action or in action? So I agree with you verbally. He never suggested that I am going to leave. And then he did. So, so I'm not sure actually how much we disagree on this matter. I thought that January 6th was terrible. I thought that his behavior between the election of November 2020 and January 6th was bad.
Ben is not the guy to go for this, because he came out like in full force against everything that happened on January 6th and has maintained that since January 6th. So I'm not sure what the strategic idea is here. Alfredo Ortiz says, got late to the surprise live. I'm Hispanic and I want a border wall to protect me from the cartels in Mexico. Why don't the white liberals agree with me and build the wall? Well, I mean, it sounds like Kamala Harris might be changing her tune on that one. We saw her on the Anderson Cooper Town Hall, which we will be covering on Saturday's show. And she said, you know what, we need to fix the immigration system. But when asked directly whether or not she wants to build a border wall, things got a little hairy.
Maybe disagreement on the extent to which we believe incitement took place as opposed to bad behavior that raised the temperature that I think was really, really negative. As far as not committing to the peaceful transfer of power, he clearly committed to the extent that he left, right? I mean, Joe Biden has been president for the last 3.5 years, for how much of that he's been mentally aware. But, you know, I'm just wondering what sort of where do we disagree?
Well, I'll quote you, right? January 6th was the worst thing to happen since 9/11. Right, and I just want to be clear that you agree he verbally did not want to commit to the peaceful transfer of power. He tried to stop it, yet you are still saying that he should be the president of the United States.
Well, I mean, he did not.
That is your claim, though. He should be the president of the United States, and you agree he verbally did not commit to the peaceful transfer of power.
Well, I mean, he did not verbally suggest that there ought to be a violent uprising, revolution, or military
but he also didn't stop it, right? So there were people inside the Capitol, and he sat for 3 hours. His closest aides.
He should have spoken earlier. I agree with you.
Yes, and they were telling him, like, Trump, you have to do this. You have to stop. He was informed at 2:14 p.m. that they were outside the Capitol saying, hang Mike Pence. Hang Mike Pence. His aides went up to him and said, they are saying this. You need to stop something. What does he do?
He's so angry. Daddy, chill. I'm just going to give this look when it comes to January 6th. I don't have to start a whole yap sesh about my thoughts on that. You guys have seen it in prior episodes. We'll let this play out.
2:24 p.m. He says, Mike Pence is a traitor. Right? That was his tweet. Why do you think he would tweet that when he knew the violence was going on? They were saying, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence had to go into hiding. Why do you think he would tweet that at that moment?
I mean, I disagree with him tweeting with that.
I'm not saying you agree with him.
So the question as to why Donald Trump does anything is a matter of public speculation.
You're a smart guy. I'm asking for your speculation.
I mean, I don't. If your question to me is whether I think that Donald Trump wanted Mike Pence murdered, I think the answer is no.
I'm not asking if he wanted him murdered. I'm saying, do you think he wanted the violence to stop?
Do I think he wanted? Yes.
Really? So his idea to stop the violence was saying Mike Pence is a traitor.
I think that he was in control of the forces that he was in control of, and the Capitol Police weren't in control of Nancy Pelosi.
What was he? He was the president of the United States.
Right, and the military was
instead of saying, hey, get out, he said, no, Mike Pence, you're a traitor. Okay. Why do you think he would say that at that moment?
Okay, I just expressed to you that I can't see into his head because I have a hard time.
But you can make a guess, though, right?
Well, can I ask you why you think he did that?
Why do I think
you said that he didn't want to be hung.
So this is what I think.
He didn't want to be hanged, right?
Yes.
You said that.
Yeah,
so
I don't think he wanted to be hanged. I think that Donald Trump was indifferent to what happened in so far the violence of Mike Pence. I think he wanted a lot of chaos. He wanted violence to delay the certification of the vote, which he was successful with, in hopes that there would be confusion and someone else might step up, like another senator, so they could allow to put forward the fake electorates. Because
well, baby, there's still a hell of confusion, even without all the fake electorates and all that stuff. I think Vivek Ramaswamy lays out the best case for election interference when it comes to big tech, social media, and their intertwinement with government agencies in tamping down certain stories. The Birth Rebel says, hey, so excited to catch you live. What are your thoughts on Ben Shapiro's debate style? And as a commentator, what's your fave commentator on politics? I'm sorry, I'm going to give like a lame answer. I don't know that I necessarily have a fave commentator on politics. I don't listen to a lot of political commentary, if that makes sense. Like I don't do a lot of that. Maybe it's because I do it so much in my free time that I don't need to listen to more when I'm well, I do so much of it in my work time, I should say, that I don't need to listen to more in my free time. As far as Ben Shapiro's debate style, I think he's a stellar debater, obviously. There's not much you can say about it. As a commentator, I'm not a big Ben Shapiro listener because I'm not a religious person. I think a lot of his views are informed by that perspective, although I do value his law background and his just very a logical and analytical mind in many cases. I think outside of religion, I really value Ben Shapiro's takes, and he is pretty well informed on the historical basis for where we're at now as a country. So that's really interesting to listen to.
Because that was the plan. That was in Greensboro's plan to do that, and that was the whole idea. So yes, Donald Trump was okay with the violence because he did not want the certification to happen. And in fact, for the first time in American history, he delayed it. And to me, it's like, Ben, I really like you, but I think there's a lot of attributes that I like about you, especially your American values. That is the antithesis of American values. Allowing that to happen, wanting that to happen, and then, yeah.
Okay, so I think that Donald Trump...
Well, in a lot of ways, Kamala Harris is the antithesis of American values, but we don't need to go there. I think he's already substantiated that.
Obviously should have done more. I agree with you. He should have done more on January 6th. I think that, he shouldn't have tweeted that about Mike Pence. I disagreed with what he was saying about Mike Pence's in the entire electoral scheme between November and January. As far as not committing to the peaceful transfer of power, again, what I will say is that the legal transfer of power did in fact take place. He did not, in fact, initiate a militia to storm the Capitol of the United States.
Trump's will.
Okay, but
that's the issue. I agree. It happened because of the guardrails of democracy, but Donald Trump did not want it to stand.
Okay.
Do you agree that Donald Trump did not want that election to be certified?
I mean, sure.
So he did not want the peaceful transfer.
It's one thing to watch it, and I'm sure like all of us can feel like the tension that exists in the room. It's a whole other thing to experience this. As somebody who has done this to a much smaller extent than being surrounded by 25 people. I mean, I've been to college campuses where just every single student is ready to try to like one-up you or get some sort of gotcha moment. It's so exhausting from both a mental and a physical standpoint to constantly be in this state of readiness of like, okay, what are they going to say next? What do I have to be prepared for? How are they going to try to get me there? And wow, it takes a lot of mental fortitude to remain as calm as Ben is remaining.
Their power that.
I mean, if the election had not been certified, then there still would have been a legal process that took place, right? I mean, the question as to...
you would have been
hold on, can I ask the opposite for just a second? So is your contention that Donald Trump actually would have been in favor of, for example, like a military coup to keep himself in power?
I think Donald Trump absolutely would have. And all evidence points that he was trying to find any way he could stay in power.
Okay.
Pepper says, why isn't common sense common anymore? Pepper. If I had the answer, I'd let you know.
He was, and this is gone.
I think he was trying to find any way to say that he didn't lose. I don't think that he was trying to activate any way that he could stay in power. That's not quite the same thing.
No, him saying that he wasn't trying to lose is different from him sending down fake electorates with fake signatures to fraudulently steal the election.
Okay, in order for there to be an insurrection, for example, you'd have to activate the military.
I didn't say an insurrection.
Okay, so again, that's fine.
All I'm saying is all of Donald Trump's behavior has suggested he did not commit to the peaceful. He did not want the peaceful.
If you're asking me to defend his behavior on January 6th, you'll notice that I really haven't.
Yeah,
so I'm
I
wondering
feel like
exactly
you're underplaying of how horrible this was.
I mean,
and that's the issue.
Which part? Are you talking about the riots? Are you talking about his behavior?
I'm talking about the fake electorate scheme and the idea that and allowing the violence for 3 hours to happen in the Capitol when they were under attack.
Let's talk about like BLM riots. How long did that go on for? In government buildings, mind you. And then when this whole like a free Palestine thing happened, regardless of how you feel about what's happening in the Middle East now, how many government buildings were vandalized and occupied in the wake of that? You didn't hear an ounce of that from the media.
Attack the senators, the people that we're supposed to protect, to uphold our democracy. He was attacking, and he watched it happen on TV when everyone around him was stopping. And I agree that
if he's accusing Ben of underplaying it, he is overplaying it.
Bad, but you're still saying, you know what? That guy did that. He let our democracy attack. Make him be president.
Well,
that's your position.
Yes, because
right. That is your position.
Okay.
Yeah. And just so we're clear what the stakes are.
Yes.
This man would want to do it again.
Okay. So let me ask you about that. Can I ask you about that?
Can I quickly say one more thing?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. JD Vance has said he would not have certified the election.
Okay. So let me ask you this. You said that he'd want to do it again. Can I ask you how?
I mean, he could do like the exact same scheme with fake electorates, except that this time, you know what? JD Vance would be like, yeah, I'm not certifying the election. What do you mean? I mean, all Mike Pence had to do was not.
No. But
yeah,
calm down. I'm not a cop.
Practically speaking,
yes.
He is currently not in office, correct? He's not the president of the United States.
You want him to become president. And
yes.
so I agree. If he's not president, he can't do it,
correct.
Which is why I don't think anyone's voting for Donald Trump.
So wait, so I have a question. Do you believe, and this is really the question, because if you're talking about he's going to do it again, the only opportunity that he'd have to do it again, presumably, would be if he won and then he were running for, say, a third term.
No, I disagree. I think he can do it for someone else. He might do it for another candidate that he likes. They'll uphold the MAGA values. MAGA has taken over the Republican Party, much to your chagrin. I agree, it's bad. but he absolutely would do that again to someone who's loyal. And J.D. Vance has said he would not certify the election. Okay. I think that's a real threat. And you've already acknowledged that you can't predict Trump. You can't even know why he would think anything. How could you say that won't be a threat?
Because
so like catastrophizing everything. It's pretty dramatic. Like, chill, dude. I don't know what else to say, but chill.
Because I find it highly implausible that Donald Trump is so caring about somebody who's not Donald Trump.
Really? What about Donald Trump Jr.?
You think he's going to do that for Donald Trump Jr.?
I think he'd do it for Donald Trump Jr. I think he'd do Vivek Ramaswamy. I think he would do it for anyone who's loyal to show that they're still upholding the MAGA name and you will want the Democrats to lose.
You're entitled to your opinion on it. I think that's radical catastrophism. I think that.
Wow. Great minds right there. The Birth Rebel says, hey again, it's Angel again. Any tips on becoming a great debater? I love debate and I want to be able to debate my personal conservative stances, especially as a Black conservative woman. Yeah, it's just about like starting up conversations. It doesn't always have to be in a debate, but engaging with people that you disagree with, engaging with the content and the news cycle of people that you disagree with. And then I think really laying out what your first principles are, because when you're debating, you have to always bear that in mind, what your stances are, why you hold those stances, why somebody may disagree, and maybe the counterpoints to the points of disagreement that others would have on your stances. And when you're operating from a place of first principles and you know fundamentally what it is you think and why you think it becomes easier and easier to debate back and forth with people. Pepper says, can we go back to the 50s or the Middle Ages or something? Things were harder, but they were simpler. Yeah, you know what? When you're focused on, just other things outside of this, I think we've just really like lost our sense of selves. We've lost our humanity in a lot of ways, and now we're focusing on these identity characteristics and politics and community based on not actual community. Yeah, we're in a dark period, it seems.
It already happened once, right? You're saying it's radical catastrophism that almost happened once. The only reason
because the conditions are not the same. And it's not possible for them to be the same. Okay, when it comes to the actual election itself, and you say, and you want him to be president. Okay, let me be clear about my position throughout this election cycle. When there were primaries, I was not supportive of President Trump in the primaries. When it comes down to a binary election, everybody now has a choice. Okay, there are only two candidates left. I've made pretty clear, I think, over the course of this debate, the myriad reasons why I don't support Kamala Harris. Okay, now Donald Trump is on the other side. So the question is, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to sit it out? Am I supposed to like?
I think you're not supposed to vote for the person who you said helped do the act that was the worst act in America since 9/11. Yeah, I don't think you should vote for him.
Okay. Yeah, and that was dramatic on Ben Shapiro's part. He should have never said that. It certainly was not the worst act in America since 9/11 by any stretch of the imagination, in my opinion. And clearly, voting for Kamala Harris is going to put this country in a way worse position than anything Donald Trump would ever do in his presidency.
Call me crazy. I think that when someone is trying to overthrow the election, you shouldn't vote for him to be president. Okay. Is that like such a...
Look at the veins popping out of this guy's neck, dude. If you are to be believed, like if you truly believe the things you're saying, you can chill out. If truth is on your side, we don't need the veins popping out of your neck.
Crazy idea.
I think that the bottom line is that when you're in an election, you vote for the person you think will be the better president for the country. And what I liked about President Trump was his first term, not his activity between November and January. That's the simple answer. You're not going to get me justifying January 6th. You're not going to catch me pretending that I think his activity on January 6th was good. I also think that it is an act of catastrophism to suggest that Donald Trump is going to facilitate the same exact thing he did on January 6th because the conditions are not the same. In fact, if you want to prevent him from doing the same thing, probably you should vote for him, because then when he's president again, he's not going to be able to run for a third term.
I think gambling with democracy is dangerous, and that's what you're suggesting we're doing. We already have a man who's shown that he would overthrow the election. You're like, you know what? Let's roll the dice again. Let's see if he does it. No, you agree it's possible he might do it, right?
No, I don't think
you think it's impossible. He might
not do it. For him to overthrow the election?
For him to do the same electric plot and not certify the election, do you think that's...
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm just going to read a super chat really quick. Based Autistic says, anyone else notice that Ben was about to shake the trans man's hand, getting grilled with insults and insanity, but still shows grace, real masculinity? Absolutely, I did notice that. It's so unfortunate that people are so rude to him just for him having an opinion that does not match their own.
It's impossible for him to do it again.
Yes, I do not think that will happen
There's no possible world where that happens.
I do not think that he is going to have the capacity.
Yeah, I mean, we already seen him do it once, and now it's impossible to do it again. Yeah, I just find that
I have a question. How's Chuck Schumer going to facilitate Donald Trump's fake elector scheme?
Sorry?
How would Chuck Schumer, the current Senate Majority Leader, facilitate a fake elector scheme? I'm acting on a practical level. That is not going to happen. So again, you can think whatever you think about Donald Trump's intent. I can think whatever I think about Donald Trump's intent. In order to actually, commit a crime, let's say this is a crime, you'd have to have motive, means, and opportunity. Okay, he doesn't have means or opportunity. So it makes it difficult for me to believe that he would do this.
Yeah, I think he will. I mean, all evidence. Sorry.
That's.
All right, thank you
Thanks so much.
That was
You
a
bet.
fun time.
Thanks a lot.
This is the second time we've met too, by the way.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Do another one.
Oh man, it's been a long day. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Here.
You know,
Busy guy.
Other than a couple of minor hiccups, I think everybody was coming at this in good spirit and wanting to have a fun conversation. There are a lot of intelligent people in the circle, and it was fun to hear what they had to say.
I think Ben was significantly more respectful than Charlie Kirk was, and a lot more well-informed than Charlie was.
I'll give him credit for being a nice guy, and he seemed to be having fun, and he seemed to be in good spirits.
With that said, I think there were a couple topics where he was being kind of dishonest. If you speak quick enough and you don't really have someone who's familiar on the topics you're talking about, we can kind of gloss over things that are kind of shaky in terms of argument.
I think that Ben overwhelmingly is probably the best debater that the other side of the aisle has. However, I still think that that what he stands for, what he stands behind, is really detrimental to the state of America and the people in it.
I thought that there were a couple of interesting arguments about abortion.
I didn't get a chance to speak because it was pretty competitive, but Ben's third claim about abortion being morally indefensible was so frustrating for me to hear.
That wasn't his claim. He said that full-term abortion is morally indefensible, which is just so wild. So not only did you show up to this thing, you sat through the whole thing and didn't speak once, but in all of your sitting and listening, you've still come out with the wrong conclusion about his stance.
A unique chapter of this issue in that we now have legislation that has been passed on the subject that we can look at the effects of what it's doing to our country. These are real instances of mothers who are dying
they're so
because
mad.
of this legislation.
And then what about the trans gentleman?
I mean, that wasn't an argument. It was an emotional appeal. Everybody's entitled to their emotions.
To be fair, I didn't really expect to get too many points across because I've seen how Ben has worked. So I really wanted to kind of give him a taste of his own medicine so you can see what it's like.
Somewhat irritating.
Oh yeah, I wanted to scream at him, ad hominem attacks, call him a dick, because that is what Ben does when he debates with decorum.
When people decide to take advantage of a time to have a discussion or an argument to simply rant for minutes on end. But again, person's entitled to their feelings.
If I can name one person from the circle that I thought did phenomenal, it would be Guy.
I would say Guy was probably the MVP today.
Guy did a really good job on the border, exposing how there's a lot of lies from the Republican side about the bipartisan border bill.
I have never seen a performance like that. I personally learned a lot, and I bet a lot of people at home did too.
There was a fellow who gave some interesting arguments about immigration, although I think he lacked standards with regard to what he would allow in and who he would allow in.
I actually was a bit surprised to hear him say one of those talking points that I mentioned, the 300,000 kids have disappeared.
He didn't say disappeared. He said there are 300,000 kids in the United States and we don't know where they are, which is crazy that people are coming out of this misstating his points.
I thought he was a little above that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Tyler did a really good job as well,
Wow.
especially when he sort of held Ben's feet to the fire on the issue of January 6th.
It is indefensible, and it's anti-democratic and anti-American values. And it's the one weakness I think Ben Shapiro knows he has.
Most of the reason that people are supporting Kamala Harris has almost nothing to do with Kamala Harris and simply to do with animus for Donald Trump on a personal level.
I am proudly voting for Kamala Harris. I think it's a no-brainer to make sure that the guy who has no interest in maintaining our democracy gets back in the White House.
Love
Kamala
that.
Harris has a better economic plan, better border plan, pretty much
Love that
across
for
the
you.
board. I think she's a better candidate.
If Donald Trump is elected, the average American will be worse off, and if she's elected, they will be better off. I care about closing those income inequities. Nothing is more American than that.
The question that I would ask for folks is, in the end, one of these people is going to be shaping policy. Do you like the policies that you've had for the last 4 years or not?
There we go. Guys, that's the end of the episode. And we're not going to watch the cast of Critical Role, whatever that is. Guys, thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me on today's stream. We got a couple of super chats to close out. Pepper says, might be an unpopular opinion, but I don't remember things being that bad under Trump. Me neither. I think we were doing quite all right outside the media lies and fabrications that were being sold to us. Joe Velcher says, Amala, love your content. As for debate, it's about consistency of stance, evolution of opinion, and decorum. In these ways, Ben is solid as a rock. The 25 around him, not so much. Yeah, that was abundantly clear. And the fact that I'm seeing people just recharacterize what he was saying, I'm seeing clips on Twitter saying these people ate him up. I'm sorry, but I did not see it anywhere. They're starving. One last one from Tijuana Border Jumper says, this was great. Glad I found you. Glad you found me too. Guys, that's it. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, if you disagree with anything I said during the stream, you can duke it out. I encourage healthy debate, but do so respectfully. And if you like this video, like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time I go live or every single time I post a video for you guys, which is every day. We'll be live tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Universal Time, so you guys can catch us for our fun Friday stream. We're going to go over some of the news we might have missed out on this week. Guys, I bid you adieu. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.